Welcome everyone. My name is Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the chair of the Planning Committee. Welcome to this meeting. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping, safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery. Can't see anyone up there. As soon as you can, but don't use the stairwells. Do use the stairwells, don't use the lifts, and assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in the Guildhall Square. If you did sign in downstairs with the Guildhall, please sign out for their records. The meeting is live web streamed, and so welcome to anyone who's watching online, because I know some people do, and everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. Except for those seats over there. So if you didn't want to be on camera, you can move to one of those seats and you can speak from there. Members of the press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they don't wish to be recorded. Please can everyone speaking use the microphones. Remember to switch them off when you have finished speaking. And for those of you who have not used these microphones before, you have to just press the button once. You don't have to keep it held down when you are speaking. So again, for those people who may not have been to a meeting like this before, there's a voting system. When voting, this is a request to all members of the committee. Members, please keep your hands raised until the votes have been counted and stated. And before we get on to the rest of the agenda, I would like to welcome Councillor George Madwick, who was appointed to this committee yesterday at full council. So welcome to Councillor Madwick. The next item is to do introductions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by introducing the committee, and then we'll go on to other people speaking at the meeting or involved in the meeting. So I will start to my right.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Chris Atwell.
Councillor Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward, Vice Chair of this committee.
Mary Vallely, Councillor for Casham and Wimmering.
Councillor Hugh Mason.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Matthew Cordy, Member for Hilsey.
Councillor George Magic, Member for Paulsgrove.
Okay, I think that's all the committee members here today. Welcome all. I'm now going to ask people to introduce if they are doing a deputation. Now, I understand that some people might have accompanied people. You don't have to introduce yourself, but it would be useful for anyone who is planning on doing a deputation on any one of these agenda items to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start the back row on the right.
Councillor Raymond Dent on item number 5.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Scott Bishop, and I am doing a deputation on item number 5.
Good morning. I am Tony Knowles, and I am doing a deputation on item number 5.
Good morning, Phil Salmon. I'm the agent for the scheme for the former Debenham site, and we're speaking in favour of that.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Benedict Swan, Copner Anchorage Park Ward. I will be giving a deputation on 1 Domham Road and 287 Laburnum Grove.
Okay. Are you speaking?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lee Lloyd, and I'm going to be doing deputation on item number 6.
Welcome to all the people doing deputations. Is there anyone else who's doing a deputation that I've managed to miss out? No, that's good. Okay, in which case now I will go to officers to introduce themselves. I'm going to start to my right because I always forget.
Good morning, my name is Ben Attrell. I'm a solicitor employed by the council. I'll be advising the committee this morning.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ian Maguire. I'm Portsmouth's Chief Planner.
Morning, Nick Lloyd-Davies, New Neighbourhoods Team Leader.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Morning, Chair. David Hodges, Head of Development Management.
Morning, Simon Turner. I'm a Team Leader in the Planning Department.
Good morning, Eva Kasprzak, Planning Officer.
Okay, similarly, have I missed anyone out? No, that's good. Okay, thanks for letting me know. When they arrive, I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I've got apologies from Councillor Standen. He's running about 10 minutes late.
Okay, perfect. I was going to go on to apologies. In fact, I'll do the rest of the apologies now. Thank you for that one from Councillor Standen. Anyone else sending apologies? Councillor Lee Hunt has sent his apologies. Anyone else, Anna? I'm not aware. No other apologies. Thank you. Okay, so just now for a little bit of clarification about the proceedings. So each agenda item will be presented in the following order. 1, the officers will present their presentation. Then there will be deputations which are done in a specific order, and you will have up to 6 minutes, which I will time, for each of the agenda items. And then we will go to the members of the committee to ask questions of officers. So once you've done your deputation, there is no further dialogue back and forward. It's you get to say what you say, and then hopefully the committee will pick up on any points and ask for clarification. Then the committee will have an opportunity to voice their opinion and to propose whether they support officers' recommendations or not. And then there will be a vote, and that will be the end of each agenda item. Okay. Done apologies. Members, declarations of interest. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Under item number 5, I see that Mr Bishop is giving a deputation. I do know his brother-in-law. I've taken legal counsel and they've agreed with me that it will not affect my judgment on the item. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other? No. So the next thing to say is the minutes of the last meeting. I can't remember who is here, but I have read them. I think that they are an accurate representation for people who are here. Are you in agreement with that, Councillor Mason? Yes, proposed by Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Smythe or myself. Okay. Okay, before we go on to the items, there's a couple of other things we need to go through. One is one of the agenda items has been dropped, and that is Belgravia Road. Do we need to say, do you want to explain why that's been dropped from the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so it's come to light since the agenda was published that the application form was inaccurate. They hadn't completed the Certificate A correctly, so there were more owners of the site than was stated. So we can't deal with the application, so we validated it, and if it's resubmitted, it will come back to you at a later time. My understanding is once we've put an application on the agenda, it has to be formally deferred by yourself, by the committee.
Okay, so that agenda item won't be appearing today. We'll see it in a future time. The next thing I want to say is there's been a request for some reordering based on a work commitment, which I have done in the past, and I'm happy to do so again. So the order I am going to propose is that the first agenda item is Domham Road, which is, sorry, agenda item 5, which will become first. The next one that we will do is agenda item 8, which is Laburnum Grove, because people doing deputations on those have got work commitments, and then we will revert back to the rest of the agenda. So the order in which we will do it is 5, me and my numbers here, 8, 4, and 6. I trust that the committee are okay with that. Thank you very much. And the final thing on changes today is I am doing a deputation on agenda item 6. So I'll be coming out of the chair to do a deputation, and I've clarified that the vice chair of the committee is happy to step in and chair the meeting from that point. Yes, Councillor Cordy.
Hello, Chair. Sorry, no, I'm not happy with that change. I'd like Domham to be number 2, please. If that's possible.
Number 2.
Does it have to be a unanimous decision by the...
No, it's,
No?
it's Chair's discretion, and what I've done before is I've actually taken requests in the order that they've come.
Sure.
I mean, I'm happy to swap Laburnum and Diamond.
That'd be
if that's
wonderful.
Yes?
Yeah, I'd really appreciate
Yeah,
that. Thank you.
okay, that's fine with me. Okay, let's get this right then. I'm not very good. Okay, so the first one that we are going to do is Laburnum, which is agenda item 8. Then we're going to do 5. Then we're going to do 4, and then we're going to do 6. So is that okay? Yes. Can I take your name?
Sorry, can I ask what site you're proposing to do the deputation on?
I didn't have anyone down for that doing the deputation on that anyway, so I'm quite happy. If you are. So your name is Simon. Okay. Okay. Before we get going, after that, we have an update as requested by members of the committee for appeals. So I am going to hand over to David to do a summary of the appeals before we get going.
Unfortunately, Chair, you have me instead.
I'm
if
sorry,
we can
Ian.
put the presentation on, David will do all the driving, however. So there's been quite a few appeals come through recently, so we're only going to cover 5 today. We'll do some others with a broader remit, probably at your next meeting. I will waffle along a little bit while we try and get the presentation operating. Members may recall these are relatively quick turnarounds on these appeals. So if we go to the first slide, so it's these 5 appeals, which are obviously 4 HMO applications and 1 residential scheme for flat conversions. As you can see, it's quite a large spread over the Portsea Island part of the city. Some are in residential parking zones, some are not, but they overall linking factor, and why we brought them all to you together, is that it is a shortfall of parking spaces, which was the primary reason for refusal in each case. So the reasons for refusal were variation on a theme of the same thing. So this is that reason for refusal. A lot of words on there, but fundamentally that there was insufficient parking against the parking standard. And that is technically true. It was a fraction of a parking spaces in most of them, but obviously we have a parking standard that allows that calculation. They were all allowed by the Planning Inspectorate for pretty much the same reasoning, and in some cases exactly the same wording. Fundamentally, the adverse impact of failing to meet the parking standard was not evidenced in the reason for refusal. Where it was relevant to have a residence parking zone, it was noted quite correctly that an oversubscription is a issue of parking permit demand, not parking capacity. The inspector wanted to make clear that the parking SPD is guidance and not a fixed requirement, and consequently there was no evidence, HMOs in this case in particular, lead to a material increase in parking demand, and consequently no evidence that that marginal increase in demand would have any notable adverse effect on neighbours. In all cases, and noting that range of properties across the city, they were all considered to be highly sustainable, with the benefit of access to a range of amenities and services, transport links that we have across the city, meaning that plenty of residents may choose alternative means of transport. 4 of those 5 applications had costs awarded against the council. Now, of course, members are fully aware that they're entirely entitled to come to a contrary view to the recommendation put forward by officers. The key issue is that view has to be substantiated. that needs a clear reason for that reason for refusal. And where we don't have a well-reasoned argument or evidence to back up the concerns that residents have made, that is likely to be considered unreasonable behaviour, which is the basis that costs are awarded. You're not awarded simply because the inspector disagrees with you, you're having costs awarded against you because you're of unreasonable behaviour. So in that case, say 4 out of those 5 costs were awarded against us. Those costs will now be calculated in the normal way. We wanted to bring these to your attention. Obviously, it's a trend of similar decisions that was important to share with you. And the punchline of it, to be blunt, is where we have that marginal failure to meet your guidance on parking, a fraction of a space, a couple of spaces, there is no substantive evidence. It's not that we don't have it, there isn't evidence that causes a material harm that would justify a reason for refusal, and consequently decisions on that in that same mould. Noting all applications are, of course, in their on their own merits, but you can see the range of different decisions decided on their merits that came to the same conclusion in that mould is likely to lead to an appeal loss and a costs award against this council for being unreasonable. So we wanted to flag that for you. They've all come in the last fortnight, I'd say, something like that. So yes, a run of appeal decisions in the same vein. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I'm going to come to you, I just noticed that Councillor Stanley has come in. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and also say whether you've got any declarations of interest.
Councillor Standen, Paulsgrove Ward, no declarations of interest.
Welcome to the meeting. Councillor Smythe.
Could we know the approximate or an average amount of the costs? Because it is a very serious matter if we are being seen as a committee to be unreasonable and it's costing the authority, which is already hard-pressed, real money.
Yeah, so the costs award is made in principle by the inspectorate. The actual amount is a matter of negotiation between the appellant and the council. So these are brand new awards, so we don't have those figures yet. They will be thousands of pounds, but it will be likely individually below £10,000. I would struggle to see how an applicant could justify a figure higher than that, but their real cost, they have to evidence actually what the appeal cost was to them that was caused by the unreasonable behaviour of the council.
You're talking about, I don't put words in your mouth, but just to give a feel, between £5,000 and £10,000 or £5,000 and £15,000 or...
I think 15 would be a hard thing for an applicant to justify, but yes, in that sort of category. Could be a bit less if they're an efficient and value for money agent. Could be a bit more if they had to do more work or there was any extraordinary circumstances in meeting the costs of doing that appeal.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's important to know because I don't want to be part of a really a committee that's seen as unreasonable, trying very hard to apply reason at all times.
Okay, any other comments or questions from members of the committee? No, in which case I think we can finally get on to the first substantive agenda item, which is agenda item 8, which we're taking first, 287 Laburnum Grove, and David is presenting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, as you said, so the application is a change of use of the property from a see-through dwelling house to a 7-bed, 7-person HMO. So you can see the location of the site there, Terrace Street with the property on the northern side of Laburnum Grove. Property under the red arrow that you can see there and typical of the housing stock in the area, as you can see. So, as a proposal for a HMO, your principal policy test is about mixed and balanced communities. So, in your adopted SPD, the criteria is set out, principally around the number of HMOs within a 50-metre radius of the site. So, as you can see, in this instance, we've identified 5 existing HMOs. So, this will bring the total to 6, and that will be 6 out of 83 properties, so 7.23% overall, so below your 10% criteria. And we'll also note that the property will adjoin another existing HMO, so there are additional criteria in your adopted guidance about whether a HMO sandwiches a dwelling between 2 other properties or results in 3 HMOs in a row. And whilst there's 2, there will be 2 in a row, but again, that doesn't breach your guidance. So this is the existing floor plan, 3-bed mid-terrace, a fairly typical layout as you can see, and these are the elevations above. So the proposed layout, the property will be extensively remodelled and extended. This rear extension here has permission following a prior approval process, and then also the property will be extended with a loft conversion under permitted development rights. What that means in terms of the layout of the proposed HMO is 2 ensuite bedrooms on the ground floor, communal living space then to the rear. On the first floor, 3 further ensuite rooms, and then in the converted extended loft on the second floor, 2 further ensuite rooms. What that will look like in terms of the property, you can see the top right, the loft extension there, and just in the middle view on the side there. And then this is the rear extension that has permission, and then you can see the internal layout through the cross section. Externally, the property has a forecourt where bins can be stored. You can see the proposed rear extension there, and then there'll be a bike store also provided to the rear. There's no rear access to this site. Just some final photos. You can see the property there in top left. Top right, you can see the property in from the light well there, and you've got a view out from that position. Just to take you back a couple of slides, that window will be enlarged, and then looking at the rear, then this is where the bike store will be provided. That building will be replaced. Chair, having considered the proposals under your adopted guidance and policies, it complies, and we recommend the application for approval.
Thank you, David. Okay. To the deputation is from Simon. Okay, Simon, you've got 6 minutes, up to 6 minutes.
Good morning, Chair, Councillors and Officers and members of the public. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today in support of the application for 287 Laburnum Grove for the change of use from a C3 dwelling to a 7-bedroom, 7-person HMO. This proposal is, in our opinion, a well-considered and policy-compliant scheme that will provide high-quality shared accommodation in a sustainable Portsmouth location. Firstly, on the most key issue of HMO concentration, the officer report confirms that within the 50-metre radius, there are currently 5 HMOs out of 83 properties. If this application is approved, that would mean that there will be 6 out of 83 properties, which is 7.23%, far below the 10% threshold. This is very clearly still the council's threshold. I understand that there is a request for the threshold to be lowered to 5%, which is suggested by a number of councillors, but to be very clear, the threshold is currently 10% and our property is fully compliant with that. Secondly, it is very important to note that all of the works being carried out for this property require no planning permission whatsoever. The only thing that did require permission was the larger extension, which has been passed. So all of the works carried out to this property can now be carried out under either prior approval or permitted development. The only planning requirement for this property is the occupation of the property by 3 or more unrelated individuals, in this case 7 individuals. The report confirms that the proposal would not create a harmful sandwiching effect or 3 properties in a row being HMOs. So all 3 of those tests, the 10% test, the sandwiching test and the 3 in a row test, are passed by this property, and therefore it's fully compliant with policy PCS 20 and the SPD. Secondly, in terms of the quality of accommodation, the report confirms that all 7 bedrooms meet or exceed the council's required space standards. Officers specifically state that the accommodation provides acceptable natural light, outlook and amenity space, and that private sector housing have raised no objection. This is therefore not an overcramped or a poor quality proposal. It is a properly designed shared home. Thirdly, on neighbour impact, the report makes it very clear that because there's not an over-concentration of HMOs in the area, one further HMO would not cause material harm to neighbouring amenity. Officers concluded that whilst activity levels may differ slightly from a single house, any additional coming and going or household activity would not be so significant such as to justify refusal. The report confirms that it is a highly accessible location, close to shops and high-frequency bus routes. It also notes that recent appeal decisions in Portsmouth, such as the ones we've just been advised about, have repeatedly found that parking concerns alone have not been justified refusal of comparable HMO applications, particularly where sites are in a sustainable location, such as this one. Cycle storage is also proposed, and I'm happy to note that we worked well with the officer to make sure that this was not only satisfactory, but we listened to the advice and guidance given in terms of where on the property this was placed and what size it would be, what outlook it would have, etc., etc. Fifth, on waste and servicing, the waste team has no objection, and it confirms that there's enough space on the forecourt for required refuse and recycling bins. You may have noticed from the photos that this property has one of the larger forecourts, as is often seen in Laburnum Grove. More broadly, this application helps meet Portsmouth's housing need by providing additional residential accommodation in the sustainable urban location. The report notes the city cannot currently demonstrate a full 5-year housing land supply, and this proposal makes a small but meaningful contribution to the provision. I fully appreciate that some local residents have concerns, and these concerns are understandable whenever a change is proposed, but planning decisions must be made purely on evidence and policy, and in this case, the professional officer assessment is clear that the scheme is policy compliant, the accommodation is of a very suitable standard, and there's no technical objection from highways, housing, waste, and also that the recommendation is for approval subject to a legal agreement, which we're happy to agree to. For those reasons, I respectfully ask members to support the officer recommendation and approve the application, taking note of the fact that there is widespread concern that the impact of the Renters' Rights Act will be that a significant number of landlords will sell up because of the pressure on them to comply with policy and with the additional rights that are given to tenants. Ultimately, this property will allow tenants to vote with their feet, because the reduction from a minimum term of 12 months to 2 months means that ultimately, should a property be of a high standard, it is significantly more likely to remain occupied. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve with this property. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you look favourably on the application.
Many thanks, Mr Hill, for your deputation. We've got one other deputation, and that is from Councillor Ben Swan. So you have up to 6 minutes, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. I'm objecting to this application on several points. The HMO database states that numbers 245, 247, 260, 270, 275 and 285 are already operating as HMOs. These are just the HMOs we know about. This is just a small area of Laburnum Grove. There are many more in this and adjoining roads, and I strongly suspect there to be other properties in the vicinity of this application operating as illegal HMOs, as this property was before it was rightly reported. It's also worth noting that there is a surplus of HMO rooms in the city. I've suggested numerous times the need for Laburnum Grove to have a road-specific review because of the nature, size of many of the properties on the road has led to it becoming a hotbed of HMO activity, and we urgently need to ascertain with near certainty how many properties in the road are operating as HMOs, illegal or otherwise. With the abuse of the Certificate of Lawful Development and the litany of retrospective planning applications we see across the city, there is a clear and present danger of Laburnum Grove ending up in the same level of HMO saturation as some roads in the south of the city that see 90% plus HMOs. It also needs mentioning that this section of Laburnum Grove, where this property sits, between Lyndhurst Road and Copner Road, has a significant run between the two roads, which regularly sees face-offs and physical altercations between drivers. With the strain on parking, this is only going to get worse if we keep illogically adding more and more cars Parking is a massive issue on this stretch, and actually residents are desperate to be able to park their cars in their front courts, which are larger, as we've just heard. Such is the level of damage people have had with their cars and the impact of mass development locally. I note that the plans for this property have also been revised several times. It does need to be highlighted that the dimensions of the application contravene the Planning Department's own HMO policy. 3 bedrooms, bedrooms 1, 2 and 4, are all under 10 metres square when unusable space is deducted. As a result, the kitchen dining area, currently labelled as 26.55 metres squared, should in fact be 34 metres squared to counter the room sizes. This is not the case here and should be grounds for rejection on the basis that this application, as I said, contravenes Portsmouth City planning policy for HMOs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Swan, for your deputation. Okay, there's no more deputations on this item, so I'm going to go to members of the committee for any questions. Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if the officers could just talk us through bedrooms 1, 2 and 4, just to see where we are with usable space and unusable space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, did you want to make a particular point, Councillor Cordy?
I was asking a question.
It was just in reference to something that had been mentioned in the deputation, I think, about...
Me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Yes. So I wonder if you could talk us through rooms 1, 2 and 4, please. We've just heard from Councillor Swan there that there could be some unusable space within these rooms, and I was wondering if you could just clarify for us.
As we say in the report, we double-check all of the dimensions and don't go simply on what's stated on the plans. So we're aware when we're looking at these that we're checking them that they do comply. You can see on each occasion we're over 10 square metres. I'm unclear on what would be unusable space in any of those rooms. They're very, very typical rooms, 2 and 4. Are rectangular in their shape. One has a canted bay, which is very typical of these properties. So I'm unclear what would be unusable in that room. I'm also conscious of that that's not actually a test in our policy either, Chair. So it only says that room needs to be 10 square metres.
Okay, are you happy, Councillor Cordy?
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Councillor Smythe.
Is it right that in other respects where there might be unusable space, that has been indicated helpfully by the applicant on the plans with a rather greyer line, so that in room 5 the little bit of corridor that passes by the bathroom isn't counted, and in bedroom 3 the more substantial bit of corridor that passes by the ensuite bathroom is also not counted. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the agents are responding to concerns that have been expressed in the committee before about these issues, and in fact, yes, in 3 and in 5, the 10 square metres is, I'll try not to waggle this too much, but along this line. So in effect, there's additional corridors here, which are additional space. They can have coats and hooks in there, yes, again, basically it complies with the guidance.
I think this is very helpful, and also I assume that little grey line in bedroom 6, where the floor height is, the ceiling height is low, is likewise not counted in the count. Although, obviously, in fact, people can use it, but it isn't deemed as being part of the size of the room.
Yes, that's correct.
I think that's very helpful, and there are no little similar lines under rooms 1, 2 and 4, so we're counting the whole of the floor area. That's helpful clarification.
Councillor Mason.
The usual type of question which I ask. Bedroom 2, ground floor, looking out onto what is quite a narrow way between this house and the next one. How big is that window in bedroom 2, and will it allow enough light into the bedroom for that room to be usable as living space?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So if I flick back a couple of slides, at the moment you can see it's a smaller window, it's still a large window in there. It'll be amended as a part of the proposal, so it's here, so it becomes a floor length window. We've also been into the property to take views out from there So you're looking down the light well there in the middle photo, and then you can see, sorry, it's slightly washed out when we get this on the screen. It looks better when you're looking on a laptop. But the window is in the back there, and you can see its outlook from the site. So we've been into the property, we've had that assessment, and we're satisfied with the light and outlook for an occupier of that property. And we're conscious that it's an existing living space in the building.
Thank you.
Can I just jump in on that, David? And is that picture on the right, the rear elevation, is that the extent of the extension?
No. So the rear extension will be added on to the rear of that. Yeah.
So that would make that would reduce light further, right, from the photos that we've got?
There's some additional, in effect, narrowing of that view out of there. Notwithstanding that, as I say, we've been into the property to look out of that view and make that assessment, and we're still satisfied with that outlook.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Madgwick.
I wouldn't be satisfied with that light in number 2. But anyway, on 8.12 on the report, it says, following further investigation, no HMOs have been uncovered by the case officer. Can you just confirm what the case officer did to investigate all of the area to make sure there is no other illegal HMOs within that circle?
Apologies, it's just getting to the part of the report. Yes, so there's available data which we've published in terms of the licensing information that we have, council tax records, planning histories. So we would look at all that information. Also, when if third parties come to us and raise the issue of potential HMOs within the 50-metre radius, we'll investigate those through the same methods and information. So that's how we would check that they're satisfied with the 10% assessment, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members? Comments? Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. Last year we were invited to visit HMO and to look around the bedroom sizes and see the light that was in the rooms. And it was quite interesting to see what is acceptable in terms of planning for lighting and what one would like to live in. I think that bedroom 2 is a bit suspect. I think that once that extension goes on the back, you're going to diminish the light even more. We saw a room that had very little light. The lady living there even told us that she had the light on 24/7 apart from sleeping. So it's just a comment around lighting in that bedroom 2. I'm not convinced by it.
Thanks for that comment. Any other comments or proposals? Councillor Outwell.
I kind of don't know why I'm here, really, because I feel I'm being directed to rubber stamp officers' recommendations. But anyway, I'm here. The report tells me that one of the main issues for consideration in the determination of this report is highways and parking. Now, the report also tells me that the parking available doesn't reach the standard we hope for properties of this kind. So I'm going to continue while I'm here to apply weight to the fact that our parking standards aren't reached, whether that's guidance or fixed rules. So I shan't be supporting the reports, but I understand that putting forward a motion to refuse isn't going to get us anywhere. So it's just where I am. But I feel like, what's the point of us being here?
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments or proposals? Councillor Smythe.
I'd like to recommend the officer's report recommendations. I'd just like to observe that I also went on a site visit to look at the equivalent of bedroom 2 in another property, but the window was absolutely tiny. And the efforts made now to put a full-length window, I think will supply enough light down that corridor, down that area. It's that at least bedroom 4 in this plan, which is similarly affected, although higher up, has been a bedroom before. So we know that has been a habitable room before. It's bedroom 2 that we have rightly been focusing on, but I'm satisfied with the enlarged window that will provide quite a lot of additional light. So I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. I think it does meet all our expectations, and I would like to propose that.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. Councillor Mason.
Yes, I would like to second that. We have to admit that we're all worried about the plethora of HMOs which we have in the city. But we are here to look at this as a planning application. As a planning application, it meets our standards for space, it meets our standards for communal living, it meets our standards throughout. So I see no reason for questioning that this is a perfectly acceptable HMO. And so I second the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Just to add, I can see it's proposed and seconded, but just to add my comments, I think actually we see a lot of HMO applications, and actually some of them are more challenging for us to decide whether we agree or not, but actually I think this one does meet, it ticks all the boxes, and actually of a high standard, so which we're coming to see more and more, which is great. Any other comments or other proposals? No. Okay, so we have one proposal in front of us, which by Councillor Smythe, seconded by Councillor Mason, to move officers' recommendations for conditional permission. All those in favour of that proposal? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. I can see as the day is going to go. I have to state publicly that we'll use my chair's vote to move that. So conditional permission, planning permission is granted. Okay, that's the end of that agenda item. So thank you for those who did deputations. We will now move on to our second agenda item, second application, which is agenda item 5. There are a lot of deputations on this. One, could someone correct my pronunciation? Is it Domham Road or Domham? Domham. Thank you for that. So we'll start with a presentation, which is over. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for change of use from a dwelling house to a 7-bed, 7-person HMO. The proposal was originally for an 8-bed, 8-person HMO, but this has been amended during the course of the application. The application is brought to you because of the number of objections and for Councillor Collins from Councillor Dent, Simpson, Swan and Tyndall. So here you can see the location of the site. It's on the southern side of Domham Road between Copner Centre and Kensington Road. Further west to Kensington Road is Mayfield School. A lot of objection comments raised concerns about pressures on parking related to the school traffic. To the south you can also see College Park, a lovely area for further amenity space. The site itself is semi-detached property with an existing outbuilding. There is side access to the property. There is no off-street parking currently and none is proposed. In terms of further context, we've got a picture of the street scene on the next slide. So here you can see it's a row of semi-detached houses in late Edwardian style. The property, the application site is shown in more detail at the bottom of the slide. You can also see, I think, the current waste storage is accommodated in the front and there would be no change to that. In terms of mixed and balanced communities, this would be the only HMO within a 50-metre radius. So the proposal meets the criteria set out in the HMO SPD. So the proposal is compliant with that policy. In terms of the existing floor plans, you can see originally this was a 3-bedroom property. to accommodate the proposal, it would have to be quite extensively remodeled, and a number of additions, physical alterations would have to take place. So these are the existing elevations, and I think it would be easiest if we just go to the proposed floor plans to talk you through the alterations. Starting with the ground floor, you can see a 6 metre long prior approval extension to the rear. There's also another rear extension, a smaller rear extension proposed within the communal area. The existing outbuilding I mentioned earlier is proposed to be retained and accommodate bike storage and a co-working room for the future residents. The first floor remains unchanged in terms of the external alterations, and then the top floor, second floor, would be extended by a hip-to-gable build-up, and a rear dormer, as well as a front roof light would be installed to provide outlook and light to bedroom number 1. All bedrooms except for bedroom number 5 would have ensuite shower rooms. Bedroom number 5 would have an off-suite, which you can see on the first floor. There's also a separate WC proposed on the ground floor for all residents. And now moving on to the external elevations, you can see those alterations proposed in the elevations. Similarly to the previous discussion, there is one bedroom here proposed that would be looking into a light well. It's bedroom number 7, I believe. Yes. We have assessed the impact on light and outlook. This would be a south-facing window, so we are content that it would provide a satisfactory standard of living, and you can also see the window is proposed to be a full height. And finally, I think we have some photographs from the site. At the time of the site visit, the external alterations have already started taking place. But this is an application just for the change of use. So, as I said earlier, the physical alterations benefit from permitted development rights, and the application before you is just for the change of use. So, based on all of that, we are happy to recommend it for permission. And I would quickly like to take you through some supplementary matters. We have received additional comments of objections raising no new concerns. However, there have been a couple of concerns that haven't been reported in the final draft of the report. So I just quickly like to talk you through those. So one of them was fire safety, which is a matter for building control and licensing, so it doesn't impact the recommendation. Impact on neighbours' right to respect for private and family life, which has been addressed in the report. Request for a HMO management plan secured via condition. This is not considered appropriate due to the scale of the development. Another concern was disruption caused by the construction phase. This is temporary and also not considered appropriate to request a construction plan or anything of this sort. And impact on property values has been mentioned, and this is not a material planning consideration. And just a last point for completeness, following the publication of the report, we have received amended elevations. This was just to tie up some uncertainties, just to make sure the elevations were correctly represented. So this hasn't changed the proposal. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. So I'll now go on to deputations. The first deputation I've got from is Mr. Bishop, who is objecting. You have up to 6 minutes from now.
Before I start, Chair, is it okay if these evidence packs are handed out to the committee members, please?
I don't know what you mean by evidence pack.
It's
That's why
got
I'm
pictures.
hesitating.
It's got pictures and data which is linked to my dissertation.
Of officers, do you want to?
Well, so obviously we can have a look at it. So obviously your guidance on public speaking advises that, you know, limited visual aids can be done. Obviously the committee is not in a position to look through data, obviously without knowing what you've put in. And obviously there's been an opportunity to validate or comment on it. So entirely up to you,
I'm
Chair.
happy for it to be circulated. Do you want it circulated before or after?
It can be done before.
Okay. Do you want? Should we get it out? Should we halt things?
No, sorry, I only got 2 copies.
Oh, okay. There's 2 copies. Yeah, we can look at it. And officers can see it as well. Okay, we'll have 1 copy for the officers to have a quick look at.
Chair, this is a document pack. This isn't something we're going to be able to scan through in 30 seconds. This either needs to be discounted entirely because I don't like the balance of this. In licensing, this would never, ever be able to do late evidence, and the officers don't have a chance to check it.
That's why I wanted to see what it was.
Yeah.
I agree with you completely. I think, unfortunately, if this had been submitted before as part of a rejection, so we will keep hold of it, but it can't be taken as use in this because we haven't got time to actually absorb it. I think that's my view. Thank you very much for that. Okay, but you have...
Sorry, Chair, just to say, I think probably what you need to do is just do your best to summarise what the pack contains in your presentation.
6 minutes, starting from now.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, Chair and Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Scott Bishop. I live at 3 Doman Road, which is the house directly attached to number 1 Doman Road, and we live there with my wife and our 2 children. I'm also speaking on behalf of our neighbours sat here today. Although the property has been reduced from an 8-bed to a 7, the fundamental issue remains the same. It still represents a very intensive use of a modest semi-detached house on a constrained family street. My objection is not based on one issue alone. It is based on a combined impact of increased activity, neighbour amenity, parking pressure, and whether this location is suitable for a large HMO. The committee report suggests that occupation by 7 unrelated adults would not be significantly different from a family household. Respectfully, that does not reflect the reality of how HMOs operate. 7 unrelated adults living independently typically means different routines, different work schedules, more visitors, more deliveries, more cooking, more bathroom use, and a much daily movement throughout the property. That pattern of occupation is fundamentally different from a single household. The level of activity created by 7 independent occupants is therefore likely to have a much greater impact on neighbouring living conditions than the report suggests. Under the Human Rights Act, we are entitled to a peaceful life. Committee members cannot expect us as a family to be able to live peacefully under these circumstances. The committee report confirms that many of the bedrooms are only just above minimum guidance standards for HMO accommodation. While the rooms technically meet those standards, 6 of the 7 bedrooms sit very close to the minimum limits, suggesting the layout has been designed to fit the maximum number of bedrooms possible into what is still a relatively small house. Minimum standards represent the lowest acceptable threshold, not necessarily that what is appropriate for every building. So while the proposal may meet the minimum requirements on paper, the question for members is whether this level of development is appropriate for this building and this street. Doman Road is a small residential suite of around 30 family homes. Many residents lived here for decades, and some neighbours have lived on the road for only 40 years, showing how stable and family-focused this community has traditionally been. The committee report notes that there are 59 residential properties within a 50-metre radius of the site, and none are currently HMOs. This is not just a statistic, it reflects the established character of this neighbourhood as a family area. The fact that the policy threshold has not been reached should not automatically mean that the first HMO introduced is appropriate for this particular property or street. The report places some weight on the proposal contributing to housing supply. Portsmouth City Council's own register, updated in March 26, shows that there's 364 licensed HMOs within the PO2 postcode area, including 129 larger HMOs accommodating 7 or more. In the evidence pack I've submitted, I've shown several searches I've made on HMO rental databases for professionals and for the similar price per room as proposed at number 1. My latest search shows 94 rooms available in the PO2 area. Whilst this could be argued to represent a snapshot in time, the fact that similar numbers appear across multiple searches suggests that supply is already high locally, and the housing benefit of this proposal therefore appears limited. The street acts as an overspill parking for surrounding restricted roads, and this is used daily by residents, nearby businesses and parents connected with Mayfield School, which has around 1,200 pupils. The photographs included in the evidence pack show dangerous parking and congestion, particularly during school drop-off and collection times. The council's own parking standards expect two off-street parking spaces for a HMO of this size, yet the proposal provides no off-street parking at all. While the report describes the shortfall as only half a space compared with the existing dwelling, the practical reality is that 7 independent occupants are being introduced without providing a single parking space in a street already operating at capacity. The report also refers to a cycle store, but a bike shed does not remove the need for cars or resolve existing parking pressure. I would also like to briefly mention the building works that have already been taken place. Works affecting the shared structure whilst carried out without a party wall agreement, including removal of chimney stacks along the shared wall. As a result, damage has occurred in our home and we have experienced water ingress into our front room for our broken chimney. Water runs down into our front room, bringing wet soot, causing our front room floor to lift, and the smell is awful. We have a hole in our roof along our party wall, mould growing in our loft due to the damaged chimneys, and this has been going on since the 16th of January. We are currently in talks with our solicitor regarding the damage to our property. Whilst I'll understand that the party wall matters are civil issues, this experience demonstrates on actions within one half an attached property can have immediate consequences for neighbouring homes. The disruption and damage to our home has caused significant stress on our family. My wife is a teacher and has had to take time away from work due to the strain this situation has caused. And our children haven't been worried by what has been happening to our home. We do not ask for or expect to be placed in this position. Whilst I fully respect that planning decisions must be made on policy and evidence, for families living in directly attached homes, decisions like this are not theoretical. They affect our homes, our well-being and our daily lives. This proposal is not simply a different type of housing. It represents turning a small semi-detached family home into a high occupancy HMO on a constrained residential street that is already under pressure. The limited housing benefit does not outweigh the impacts on neighbouring amenity, parking pressure and the character of this road. For those reasons, I respectfully ask members to conclude that this site is not suitable for a development of this scale and to refuse its application. Once a family home like this is converted to a large HMO, the impact on neighbouring homes in the street is permanent and cannot be undone. Thank you for listening.
I don't know whether you timed yourself, but it was with 1 second to go, so that was quite impressive. Thank you very much, Mr. Bishop. Okay, so now the next person to speak is Tony Knowles, who is the applicant. You have up to 6 minutes for your deputation.
Firstly, I'd like to publicly apologise to Mrs. Bishop because the party wall agreement was a misunderstanding between myself and the builder. And as soon as I was aware that the party wall wasn't agreed, I instructed the building works to be stopped immediately. Unfortunately, that has left us in between a rock and a hard place because we can't secure the roof until the party wall has been granted. Aside from that, I've been a landlord. My journey started because I left university. I'd had a taste of freedom. I tried finding suitable accommodation, and after spending 8 months living in a shared house, because they weren't called HMOs then, you just rented a room, living with 4 other people, sharing a bathroom, I gave up, and I didn't want to be defeated and have to move back home, but I gave up, moved back home, and then it was different. I worked 3 jobs, and within 2 years I managed to save up enough for a deposit and bought my first house. Nowadays, there was actually a report on the radio today when I was driving here saying the average age of children leaving home, buying their first home, is 34. So you're expecting people to go to university at 21 and then save up until they're 34 before they get their independence back. Now, I'm really upset at the experience they've had due to the building works, but that can all be fixed and will be fixed as soon as the party wall's done. In terms of planning, I employed a responsible professional architects firm to make sure that the design of the building works, and we've worked with the planning officer to make sure that it complies with all the regulations. my other driver was, I hear stories of nurses in particular living in HMOs where they are scared to go home because of other tenants in there, making them not feel particularly safe where they're living. Now, whilst I accept that if you live in a nice street, I came from a nice street like Donman Road, I didn't then want to have to live in a rundown street alongside less professional or less people with less morals or less respect for their neighbours. And the bit that I can't get my head around is most people in this room probably have had children or have children of a certain age where they could be leaving home. Now, would you really want them to be forced to live in a less desirable area? Or, because to me, the bit that maybe is naive, but maybe that's because I've got a different vision for the HMO. I want people to feel that they want to go home. When I moved in the shared house, I didn't want to go home because of some of the other people that lived there. I didn't want to share the bathroom. The whole point of this is that they don't have to be graduates, they could have, but if they're working in the hospital especially and places like BAE, they get youngsters in from university, from college. They can't afford to buy a house or to buy a flat. This makes it very affordable, very safe, and it's people that are decent people. We're not filling it with drug addicts or alcoholics. This is so that your children have got somewhere where you'd go there and be relieved. If they move out of home, you've got all these stories. Everyone seems to think of HMOs. We do. I agree with some of the comments councillors made. The whole thing with HMOs, it's not the problem with the HMOs, it's the problem with the rogue landlords that just have a building and just fill it with people and they don't care who's there. This isn't one of those HMOs. This is for people that want somewhere nice to live and are going to respect the fact, the time and effort that's gone into making it a nice place. That's why the communal area is vast. The out of the separate working area, the co-working area, that's so that people aren't confined to their room. If they do have to work from home, they can't work in the communal area where there's a washing machine on and someone's cooking. They can go outside into a separate quiet area and work and not actually feel like they're cooped up in their room 24/7 if they're not actually going to work, in the hospital or wherever they come from. And the idea is that obviously if it's in a nice street, I understand the objections, but that's because the people, I think, don't appreciate. They're going online and seeing all these horror stories of HMOs and the type of terrible people that live in them and how they're run by terrible landlords, but that isn't the case. We've tried, well, I personally have made every effort to make sure it's fully compliant, and I will be really upset if the people that live there don't appreciate where they live, because the people that we want to attract to live there are going to be people, I'm sure, that will appreciate the high standard that it's going to be constructed to, the fact they have a separate space, they're in a good neighbourhood. These are people that aren't going to want to live in bad neighbourhoods. They're going to want to live in a good neighbourhood, and I think they will contribute to the neighbourhood once this all settles down. I do know a friend of mine has a HMO that is purely for doctors and nurses, and the people next door have called on them twice in emergencies when they've actually needed medical care, and the people next door have jumped on it and gone and helped them. And that's my vision for this HMO. It's not to bring the street down. It's actually to, and also with you take into account all the other comments that are made about shortage of housing. I mean, environmentally, it actually helps provide housing. It saves energy. It allows. It does. I don't think it. If you put the right people together, it won't damage the community. It can enhance the community.
Can you draw your comments to a close? Is that it? Yeah.
Okay.
Because you've had 6 minutes
right,
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Thank you very much for your deputation, Mr. Knowles. Hello.
I've just had a message from Councillor Simpson. He was due to make a deputation on this item. He sent apologies and says Councillor Dent will be sort of speaking on his behalf.
Okay. Thank you very much for that update. So I've got Councillor Dent down anyway, so you can do your deputation. In fact, you were next. Okay. So you were down anyway to do a deputation. So
I was indeed, Chair.
I'll take off Councillor Simpson. Okay. You have 6 minutes, starting from now.
Thank you, Chair. First things first, the amount of objections, 75, including one from the local MP, Amanda Martin, I do believe. It does seem that we are not taking into account the objections that are being raised by residents of the area. With the respect of the number of HMOs in the area, yeah, it's, Scott actually said he checked there was 94 in the PO2 area. I've checked Portsmouth. There are hundreds and hundreds of empty rooms in HMOs. We don't need any more. Regarding parking, even in the information that was given by the officers about parking, why it's not being accounted for and basically being overturned, actually it does state in there somewhere that basically one of them was overturned because we didn't have a curbside survey done, parking survey done. If we aren't doing these surveys, then basically what's the point? On the other point, bedroom number 7, it's the window seems to be small enough to actually give a certain amount of light in the room, but I cannot see it actually lighting the room properly. Bedroom number 6, we are 1.2 millimetres square metres, I should say, oversized. That equivalent, because the work at the moment is being built, that equivalates to 2 millimetres smaller around that room, i.e. if the plaster is a little bit thicker than normal, the stud work is put in fractionally out, will be undersized. I'm assuming that once all the building work is done, we will be going in there to measure these rooms exactly again. And if they are undersized, will we be throwing out the planning application? I very much doubt it. Doctors and dentists in the area, I know it's not accountable. There are none. They're all full. There is no spaces left. I have checked. I'm pretty sure I know where this is going to go, but my objection is that this is completely and utterly out of character with the area. Having lived there, or very close to there, for quite a number of years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your deputation, Councillor Dent. Okay, I have one more deputation from Councillor Swan. You have 6 minutes, Councillor Swan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm objecting to this application on several counts. The property is located adjacent to the busy shopping area on Copner Road, which has a vibrant, well-used economy extending into the evenings due to the nature of the businesses on this stretch of road, meaning that parking is already stretched for residents. As the road is very short, another significant impact on the area is Mayfield School at the western end of the road, that in recent years has been rebuilt and is now a larger all-through school, which has meant additional teachers, additional support staff, and additional traffic and parking issues due to the increase in the provision of the school. It should also be noted that Mayfield School is utilised by various groups and organisations late into the evening and at weekends, meaning further stress on surrounding roads for parking. Mayfield, despite being a significantly large school, has no parking at all on the site, not even for teachers, so the burden is purely on the local roads and on residents. Also in close proximity to Doman Road is Cliffdale Primary Academy, which, due to it being a school for children with special educational needs, sees a significant amount of traffic, as in many cases the children that attend are driven to school. The granting of this application will not only impact residents, but also the ability of local businesses to attract customers, as parking will be further reduced and potential customers will just go elsewhere. There is no permit parking in this area as a protection for residents. However, even without this application, it is recognised that this area needs a traffic and parking review, which I've already requested some months ago. Even in the past few weeks, several EV charging points in this exact area were not approved due to the changes to the road, where lines were being extended to accommodate the loading bay and new entrances at Mayfield School that further reduced parking. Residents already have massive problems with parking due to these factors, and the granting of a 7-bed HMO, and by the way, I bring to the committee's attention once again that it was initially submitted as an 8-bed HMO, and has seemingly been amended to assure what I can only assume is an advised smooth passage. The application is also not in keeping with the area. Kensington Road, running adjacent to Doman Road between Battenberg Avenue and Mayfield Road, has no HMOs. Doman Road has no HMOs. St Swithun's Road has no HMOs. Battenberg Avenue, running parallel with both St Swithun's and Doman Road, does not have any HMOs. Mayfield Road between Copner Road and Kensington Road has no HMOs, and Copner Road between Battenberg Avenue and Mayfield Road equally has no HMOs. And that's not even looking at the east side of Copner Road, that the HMO count, which we saw earlier, clearly shows, also has no HMOs in their lower western halves. This is a road with family houses in what must be recognised as the most important area for families, by 2 schools and a stone's throw from 2 other schools. This application could not be more clearly the definition of a development being not in keeping with the area. I also want to highlight that the regular changes to the plans, and I do think it's very poor form, by the way, that this application has been in constant movement, which has not given residents as fair opportunity to properly surmise it as they scrutinise it as they should. Bedroom 1 has a Velux roof window, but only 1 roof window, whereas applications such as this usually have 2 windows, so I question the lights. Further to this, despite the changes to the published plans, there are serious doubts as to whether the requirement of 75% of the ceiling in bedroom 1 is actually above the required 2.3 metres squared. In the original plan, there was a blue grid showing this area in the room, and there is no way on earth that this represented 75% of the room. The blue grid has since been removed on subsequent versions of the plan, and this all seems very suspicious. Bedroom 7 has a window that is between 2 significantly high walls set back from the rear of the property, meaning that light into this room will be minimal. Even the elevation plans show the window in shadow. It would be deeply wrong and inhumane to expect anyone to live in that room in almost permanent shadow. Bedroom 6 is only 10.12 metres squared, so there is the argument about unusable space, resulting in the kitchen dining area needing to be more than the existing 26.84 metres square. I also note that 5 of the 7 en-suites will require mechanical ventilation, which is just not eco-friendly at all. The committee report states that the applicant has made a concession by reducing the application from 8 to 7 beds. I'm frankly amazed that somebody even wrote this down as a serious point. If approved, this property will not be a 7-bed. An application will be submitted within weeks of this meeting, applying to increase to at least 8 beds. And judging by the frankly laughable co-working space that has appeared in the plans, and I do understand the applicant wants to paint a picture on the application, but we've seen time and time again studies appearing on HMO plans that shortly after applications have been approved are suddenly changed to an additional bedroom on a subsequent application. There will be denials, but they know it and we know it. We've seen it before countless times. Also, a reminder that even if half of the minimum number of residents have cars, it exceeds the number of expected cars set out in the parking SPD. It is always the residents that carry the burden of these applications, and it is a deeply cruel irony that these applications come from the gaming of the system by those who do not live in the city, but who smugly and brazenly publicise across Facebook groups and YouTube videos how to exploit loopholes in planning policy whilst trying to persuade us of their faux altruism. Listening to residents and hearing their stories, my heart absolutely breaks for them. They love their homes, they love their community, but they and all of us are at the mercy of the ludicrous law called the Town and Country Act 1990, which allows developers to act with impunity. Residents be damned. All political parties in Westminster are guilty of turning a blind eye to this. Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems and Reform, none of them, and I include my own lot in this, have moved any motion to amend this law. None of them. Perhaps it's just too politically convenient not to. This application is just not suitable, and unless this committee is going to correctly apply the letter of the SPD on parking and recognise the issues with the plans with issues such as light and space, then yet another fantastic community is going to be ripped apart and another family home lost. Committee, these residents' hopes are in your hands. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Spot on. Thank you, Councillor Swan, for that deputation. That brings us to the end of the deputations list. Okay, so questions, members. Councillor Madgwick and then Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few. Recommendation 2 asks that the delegated authority be granted to the Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Growth to add or amend conditions where necessary. Why? Is my first question.
I'll deal with that. It's a standard wording used by all authorities on pretty much all recommendations, just in case there is an error identified post-consenting and not having to have typo and things like that, and not having to bring it back to committee. It's a normal administrative process.
Fine. And I'm just wondering if we could see the proposed floor plans on the screen again, please, just because the text is rather blurred on my one. I just want to look more into that, say that communal working co-space there. So was that where the original 8th bedroom was proposed?
No, the original 8th bedroom was proposed in the extension. So the 6-meter extension, rear extension, is where the original bedroom was proposed. I think at the end of the presentation we actually have the original plan. Yeah, the final slide. Yeah, because the original proposal also included a side extension. So you can see there is currently a side access, but the proposal was to extend the whole property to cover that side access. So there would be no side access, and the bedroom would be in that rear extension, and an ensuite bathroom would be next to the kitchen.
Okay, that's sensible. Bedroom 1 specifically, area provided in your list, it says 11.39 with more than 1.5 ceiling height. Now, as a man of 6'4", this alarms me. 1.5 metres is less than 5 foot. So to me, that would not be defined as a usable space without going on my knees around the room. You know, the kind of the benchmark or realistic usability benchmark is usually 1.8, but the standard nice room of living height would be a minimum of 2.1. Do we have any measurements in relation to the ceiling height at 1.8, and does that bring that below the 10 square metres? Because with all due respect, 1.5 might be legal. Well, there's a line there, but I think that line signifies the 13.85, Judith. So I'm asking, have you got floor space for 1.8?
No, we haven't measured it because the HMSPD takes the measurements from the 1.5 line. I guess it depends on what you think of as usable space. The usable space can be used for storage, for example.
I mean, personally, Chair, I would say usable space is something I could stand in. I think would be defined as usable space.
That's anyway.
You could do, but that's yeah. You got to live in the rooms, yeah.
And anyway, question. Did that answer your question?
No, not really, because we don't have an answer of how much the space is with 1.8. But so no, it didn't answer my question. But
Okay,
I
I think
understand
Ian might be coming in with some useful information.
So, to be absolutely clear, no, we don't have that measurement. It is not part of your adopted tests. So the applicant hasn't been asked to include that in their drawings. Officers obviously haven't done that. We would have to replot the building into a notional 3D model to create that number, which is a selection by Councillor Madrick. It is not part of your adopted process, and therefore isn't a number that we will have access to.
I'm just going back to Councillor Madrick because I think he's got a follow-up
question. He's right in a way. You know, you're asking, does it technically meet the minimum measurements? That's what Ian's saying. But under the planning law and local policy, the real test is, does it provide a good standard of accommodation? My argument is that it doesn't.
Okay, thank you. Have you got any more questions? Councillor Smythe, and then I come to Councillor Cordy.
This is just a question of clarification on this. On the plan, there's a little grey line running through the Velux window. The size of the room that's recorded on the chart in the paper is only measuring, as it were, north of that line, isn't it? Because
that's correct.
Yes. So the bit south of that line is, if you like, extra, which could be used for chest of drawers or the toe end of a bed or whatever, couldn't it? Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Thank you.
Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. Now, some of the issues that we've been told that we should consider include obviously parking, which I guess we've been also told that we can put limited weight on. I was wondering about human rights. How much weight can we apply to the human rights aspects? I realise that the officers mentioned that human rights have been looked at and they feel that everything's fine there. But, you know, when Mr. Bishop gives his deputation and talks about the health of the family being diminished by this, and that includes 2 children, I would like to know whether the fact that it's affecting the neighbours, the direct neighbours' health, and the mental health of the 2 children is a consideration.
I mean, I'm happy to go to officers for an answer on that. I do think we need to separate out the planning reason. I mean, it sounds like a really unfortunate set of circumstances that have been described around the building of it, and absolutely. But I think we need to separate out. So what you're talking about is not the experience of the building, but actually the project. So this is about change of use. I just want to clarify it in my mind.
Well, yeah.
The change of use of this and the impact that might have on the family living next door.
Absolutely. You know, you've got this party wall. You've got a chimney that we've been told by Mr. Knowles that's got a big hole in it still. This is affecting the children. And I want to know whether or not we can put weight on that under human rights.
Okay, thank you. Question to be answered.
Certainly. So, as 8.57 says, the right to the enjoyment of property is a qualified right. I mean, inevitably, we all must muddle along, so to speak, in society. So it is not an absolute right. There is interference with the enjoyment of your property by everything your neighbours do. The question is it a reasonable interference? We define a reasonable interference through the planning process to work out what is a reasonable land use. If somebody wanted to put in a metal beating workshop in half of a residential semi-detached house, that would not be reasonable. I would be hazarding a guess, but a residential use for a 7-bed HMO is reasonable in line with your policies. So that interference, and I'm not going to pretend it's not an interference, is something you take into account, but it's no different to the overall fundamental judgment that is, does this comply with policy? Is this a reasonable use of this land? The fact that there has been some damage caused, if that is the case, to the property through a failure to agree a party ball act and a bad builder or whatever the circumstances are, is not material to the determination of the application before you, which is about the use of the building.
Councillor Mason.
Bedroom 1 has been mentioned. The Velux window there, is that a standard size Velux window? It's a question of light availability. Are you happy that that will provide a reasonable amount of light? That's my first question.
Yes, we are happy it will provide quite a reasonable amount of light because it's actually quite wide. It's 1.3 meters wide.
Okay, so it's 1.3 meters wide and standard size. Parking has been raised, and although we realise that in most cases parking would, if we use that alone, would be inviting a £10,000 fine on this council. This is close to schools. Has the impact of the school on the parking of this area been considered when we are looking at the planning when you are developing the planning application or considering the planning application?
So when we were considering the planning application, it has been taken into account. The highways officer has been consulted when we received the photographs from the residents telling us about the pressures during drop-off and pick-up hours. And the highways engineer emphasized the point that it would have to be a severe impact on the function of the highway to justify a refusal of this application. And the test in the National Planning Policy Framework basically has not been met.
Thank you.
Councillor Atwell.
Is the number of objections material to our consideration? Just to pick up on a point that Councillor Dent raised.
Sorry, was the question
The question
the
was-
number of objections? Is that sorry? No. So that's a well-established tenet that the volume of objections isn't material. It's what those objections say that matter, Chair.
Just to expand, because I think it's helpful for people who might be watching that we do listen to residents, and that's our job. But 744, 744,000, it wouldn't make a difference to the determination that we're asked to arrive at. But we are listening. We do listen.
I think that's a good point, and also to focus on what the decision is being based on. And interestingly, that a lot of the building development has been done under permitted development rights, which is also what we are not making a decision on here. So we're making a decision on the change of use. Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Madrick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Dent obviously raises a good point, and as someone that's done a lot of building work himself, where's our, as a planning policy, and it's just an open question because I genuinely don't know, what's our threshold for error? Because Councillor Dent is right. If the plaster is put on too thick, when we're talking about some of these here, where we're talking about this, and we are literally talking about this to make it legal, what is, as a authority, our contingency? Because a very small error, which is which is completely accidental, would push this under the legal allowance. So what do we do as an authority to make sure that it is compliant with the rules that we set?
Can anyone answer
that? Well, I honestly don't think an occupier of a room is going to notice whether the plaster is half a centimetre thick or a centimetre thick, which affects, does it just nudge over the 10 square metres or just below? They're going to enjoy essentially the same amenity in that same room. Licensing do carry out some investigations on site, I believe, and it's up to them if they want to measure the rooms. But the plans need to be in accordance with, the build-out needs to be in accordance with the plans, and that is what we have to assume happens unless we receive a complaint to the contrary.
I think Ian's got something to add on that.
You don't get me very often, so I'll take the opportunity to say what I will always say. We don't do planning by numbers. You know, it's a notion. We have to have a number so that we can guide developers, they can move forward. But whether it's 9.99 or 10.01, as Mr. Turner tells you, you're not going to notice that difference as an occupier. We have to make a reasonable judgment. We know if they can demonstrate that there's room for a 10 plus square metre issue, and they intend to do that, we know that that is going to be a very large room compared to the 6.5 square metres. It's the minimum national standard, and consequently we can apply it on that basis. You have to apply common sense in the work we do in decision making.
I'm glad he says that, Chair, that we don't do planning by numbers, because I think that's precisely what I've just been told that we do.
Is this a question?
Well, it is a question, because I'm going to come back on it, because if Mr Maguire is saying that we don't do planning by numbers, but I've just asked a reasonable question in relation to what is a comfortable living space in relation to 1.8 metres or above, then we are clearly doing it by numbers. So I'm asking Mr Maguire why we do planning by numbers when it fits the approval, but not when we're trying to challenge it.
Yeah, so to repeat that, you have to have a number so you can guide. You're dealing with real things that really have dimensions. So developers need to have confidence of what they can put forward to move it forward. As I've said to this committee many times over the years, I've given you exactly the same statement. Obviously, a 1 metre wide room that's 10 metres long is 10 square metres. There's your number, but that would be an unacceptable scheme. But a room that's roughly rectangular, that is 10 square metres, is a good sized and quality room, unless there's something particularly abnormal about it. See earlier corridor reference. So that's how numbers are useful to help you apply your logic. But please don't approve a 1 metre wide, 10 metre long room. That would be a terrible living environment. But do approve a room like we see here that is roughly rectilinear in form, provides appropriate space for occupiers and meets that guidance. It is common sense to apply, and obviously you have to have awareness of the numbers, the national space standards, all these sort of things, to help inform your judgment, evidence-based decision-making. You can't just say, I don't think I like that room. That's not evidence-based. That's walking straight into costs against this councillor as being unreasonable. But if you can demonstrate, and I'll go back to my corridor example, that notwithstanding it meets the guidance, it is going to create an unacceptable room. So another easy example, if the whole room is less than 1.5 metres in height, so you're on your knees for the whole thing, there's a useful number to help you guide that. But if some of it's between 1.5 and 2.3 metres in ceiling height, as discussed, a foot of a bed, a chest of drawers, these things can be used, but not the majority of the room. We have some other numbers to help inform that. Evidence-based decision-making, it is the bedrock of the job you have as a planning committee.
Thank you for that explanation. Councillor Standen.
It's probably more of a comment than a question.
Can you, if it is a comment, can you just hang 1 minute? Because I think we're coming to the end of questions. Councillor Cordy, sorry, you did actually put your hand up, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, mine was based on a comment, but I think I can make a question out of it. This party wall is really bothering me. The fact that work took place without an agreement in place, they've damaged number 3's wall, they've damaged their chimney by the sounds of it. It seems very convenient that this has all happened without the agreement and without the knowledge of the owner. Is there anything that we could do as a council to look into this, or is this outside of our remit?
I believe it's outside our remit, but I'll let someone who's more qualified than me.
Yes, the Party Wall Act is a civil matter between them. Someone has damaged somebody else's property. The Party Wall Act is there to allow that damage, so to speak, and have it agreed. And if something's gone wrong in that, it is a civil matter. Unfortunately, the residents have to resolve.
Would this also be a matter for building control?
Obviously, if a building is damaged and it creates a dangerous structure, that is an issue. But if it's allowing egress of water, etc., that is a civil matter between the two issues. Obviously, the final building control sign-off of the alterations to the building under the building regulations would require a building not to allow seepage from a chimney, etc., as the solution. But obviously, it's clear from the deputations you've heard today, neither party is suggesting this is intentional or the final solution, and it does sound like there is a desire from the developer in this case to progress that matter and find a solution to any damage that might have occurred.
Okay, any other questions around the application that we've got before us? Okay, now I shall go on to comments. I'm going to come straight to Councillor Standing because he had his hand up first.
Yeah, sorry. It was just a comment on bedroom number 1. The officers obviously said about not approving things that were 1 metre wide and 10 metres long. And bedroom 1, to me, is that we've got that dotted line across there. If you're less than 5 foot tall, it's unusable space, as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, I can't support this.
What is the remaining area again? I can't see because it's so small. 11.3. Okay, so even taking that out. Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Madrick.
Thank you again, Chair. Yeah, I appreciate what Ian said. So it gives me a greater understanding that, you know, if we're not doing it by numbers, that's fantastic, because that means we don't have to listen to the required standards, which is good to know.
Chair,
as long
before
as
we get too far down this hole, I will need to interrupt as the Chief Officer.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to apply your standards. They are a material
That's fine.
consideration.
So under the reliance on the marginal headroom threshold, for me, as I say, we don't know what's 1.8, what's 2.1. In my personal opinion, I don't believe that any room that's under 2.1, personally, provides a good standard of accommodation. It's certainly, in my opinion, not a living area. Even if we went down to the 1.8, which is the height of the average person, I would still say that's not a comfortable living area. So 1.5 is even worse, in my opinion. We don't have the numbers. So in my opinion, number 1 does not provide a good standard of accommodation, which is under our plan and policy law. So I'm going to propose to reject this application on the grounds that it represents overdevelopment and will result in a poor standard of accommodation. Whilst the applicant presents a total floor area, a significant proportion of the space falls below the acceptable head height, materially reducing its usability. This demonstrates an attempt to maximise occupancy within the constrained roof space, leading to a substandard living conditions. Furthermore, the intensification of the property would place additional pressure on parking and local services. So that's my grounds for refusal, and that's what I'm proposing, Chair, as a recommendation. Hopefully I have a seconder.
Thank you. Oh, we've got 2 people jumping in. So I think Councillor Cordy got in first. Yes?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to this human rights issue. The right to respect for private and family life. I feel this is infringing upon the neighbour's right for their family life due to the increased noise, the overcrowding and the loss of privacy. I think these factors do affect the family, especially those next door that have mentioned to us that they are suffering from health issues due to this, and the fact that they've got 2 young children. So I would like to second Councillor Medrick here, and if he's okay with it, I think we should also add in some information here about the human rights considerations.
Okay, so that's seconded. Are there any Councillor Smythe?
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying I have every sympathy with the Mr. Bishop about the party wall problem. I think it's a dreadful thing to go through, but it is a temporary thing, and we have heard that it's being put right. And I hope that they get adequate compensation for decorations and the leaks and all the other things which they properly deserve. But this application is about the long-term use for 7 individuals, and it does meet all the requirements that we have under our policy. I'd like to make a particular comment on bedroom 1, which it says clearly in the report has 11.39 metres square with more than 1.5 ceiling height. Now, I appreciate a little bit of that will be the slope going up from the space I think would probably be taken by the toe of a bed or a chest of drawers or whatever. But the bulk of the room, and I would venture the understanding that I have that at least 10.2 or 3 metres would be above the higher height of 1.8 or 2 metres because of the slope of the roof. So I'm okay with that. I'm glad to see a cycle space. I'm glad to see the ensuite rooms are all a good size. And that means you can keep quite a lot of your cosmetics and things in those rooms under the basin or whatever. And the bedrooms are in accordance with our policy. The combined living space actually is slightly larger than we sometimes see at 26.84. I myself would not be happy to approve an application if it ever came in for 8 people in this property, and I'll be absolutely firm about it. That would be cramming and greed, and I wouldn't go anywhere near to that. I think we need to just make sure the applicant understands that. There's quite a lot of work to have done that, and that might not prove to be economic. I'd like to propose the officer's recommendation on this, and thank everybody for allowing us time to talk it through.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
I will second that. We have national standards and we have local standards. And this application meets our standards. On parking, it certainly is in accord with paragraph 116 of the National Planning Policy Framework. The rooms meet our standards. I would certainly, if anything were less than 10 metres of square metres of usable space, I would argue even 9.99 metres. We have a standard, and that standard is 10 square metres. It meets 10 square metres. On matters of light, I am satisfied. I think it does meet the standards for lighting here. And in questions of numbers, I think the points which were made, and very strongly made by Councillor Swan, that the very low numbers in this neighbourhood means that there will not be a change in the feeling of the neighbourhood by adding this single house in multiple occupation. So I would second the proposal made by Councillor Judith Smythe.
Thank you. Simon, did you want to say something?
Thank you. I just wondered if it might assist a bit more to look at bedroom 1 and the matter of ceiling height and room size. So that there's some members have expressed concern about the ceiling height, The alternative to the room as shown is to make the room smaller to achieve all of the ceiling height above, say, 6 foot, 1.83 metres. So you can see on the bedroom there, the dotted line goes across at 1.5 metres height. So everything on this north of that is compliant with the expectation. And then you've got some more space below 1.5 metres going down because of the slope of the ceiling, where you can store, you can have any number of storage issues with chest of drawers, shoe rack, the toe of your bed, as a councillor said, desk, etc. So the alternative to that, if you don't think that's high enough, is to box it off at, say, 10 square metres and just lose useful space in the room. So that doesn't seem like a sensible option. It meets our standards. There's more than 10 square metres with more than 1.5 metre height. It's 11.39, and there's further space beyond that. So I just wanted to see if that assisted members at all.
Thank you for that, Simon. Councillor Vallely.
It's not a question, because I'm making it into a comment, but it'd be really useful.
You're all
We're
right.
on comments. It'd be really useful if new members had done their training, because I think a lot of these questions would be answered.
Okay, that was for your comment. So I believe that everyone who's wanted to speak has spoken.
Chair, before you move to motions, obviously we did have a motion from Councillor Madgwick, and then there was some potential additional comments from Councillor Cordy to be added, which were not responded to by Councillor Madgwick, and also Councillor Madgwick's motion contained a number of aspects that haven't been debated by the committee, so we'll probably need some more clarity on that as well, such as impacts on local services.
Yeah, so if you jump in if I don't cover anything, Ian. So I was about to say that in taking this in order, there was a proposal to refuse this planning permission by Councillor Madgwick. I might need some help with material planning reasons why, because I know you did say in your opinion, and I absolutely kind of accept that that is your opinion, and then you did do some quoting, and I think it was around overdevelopment, but I might need a little bit more help around material planning reasons of why it's overdevelopment when it meets our standards, because I can't come up with those words. And I think the second reason was about parking. And then the third one was whether you wanted to take on board Councillor Cordy's request around human rights. But again, I'd need a little bit, or officers might be able to help, material planning reasons for why that would be your recommendation.
Cool, yeah. I mean, first of all, I think just going back on Councillor Vallely's comment, 'cause I'm sure Ian and certainly Ben would like to clarify that I have been given planning training in the past. I have completed planning training. I've sat on here many a time, so Councillor Vallely once again is wrong. However,
can we just keep this to the job?
I tried, Mary, but like Labour always does.
Can we just keep this to?
Yeah, just digs. So
we have a commitment here as members of the committee to do this in a mature and sensible way. So please can members do that. And let's go back to the material planning reasons. Thank you.
This comes down to me, as I say, if Ben Atchell needs to know, obviously, under the planning law and local policy, the test is also, and I quote, does it provide a good standard of accommodation? Now, my argument is, as I say, that in bedroom number 1, although the eaves height is marked as 1.5, and I know the officers have mentioned that you could, for example, put a foot of a bed within that space. What I would argue is if you look at the drawings, putting the foot of a bed in that space would mean the bed has to sit smack bang in the middle of the room, which, let's be honest, practically that's not going to be the case. My argument is that 1.5 simply isn't a usable space by any reasonable average size human being. 1.8 is often in multiple planning policies, actually, 1.8 is defined as, and I'll quote, the more realistic usability benchmark. That's a quote in some of the planning laws. So number 1 does unsettle me. if we look at, and I didn't mention this in the thing, but if you want additional reasons, I am alarmed by what Councillor Dent and Councillor Swan said in relation to the threshold of space. I am very confused about when we say we don't do by numbers, but then we do by numbers. And what I will say is that a number of these rooms are on the thresholds. And if we look at, for example, bedroom 6, which is on the ground floor, we've got a bay window. Realistically, just below that bay window is not going to be used, which means it would take up below. So what my point is I don't believe that this application has satisfied me enough that the bedroom 1 will have over 10 square metres of usable space. I'm not satisfied by that, and I believe the accommodation does not provide a good standard of accommodation. So, as I say, I'll repeat what I said before, Chair, if it helps. I'm objecting to this application on the grounds that it represents an overdevelopment and results in a poor standard of accommodation that does not provide a good standard of accommodation for the guests. Whilst the applicant does present a total floor area, a significant proportion of the space falls below the acceptable head height, which materially reduces its usability. This demonstrates an attempt to maximise the occupancy within the constrained roof space, leading to a substandard living conditions. Furthermore, the intensification of the property would place additional pressures on the parking and local services. And to finally answer your question, Chair, I'm happy to subsume Matt Cordy's human rights amendment if you'd like to read it out again.
Yes, happy to do so. So on page 1 of this agenda, we're told that issues for consideration include human rights. Now, I've mentioned Article 8 of the Human Rights Act, and I realise that it's not. I'm trying to work out what Ian said. It's not an absolute, is it? That's right. It's a qualified right. Well, if we're asked to consider it, I do believe that the neighbours in number 3 have had an infringement put upon them to their privacy, to their family life due to increased noise, the overcrowding that will happen, I believe, and the loss of privacy. I think these factors substantially affect the family life, especially, you know, they've mentioned that they've got health needs and small children.
Okay, so those, I think there's 3 key reasons. I'm sorry, sir, we can't do a two-way conversation once you've had your deputation. No, I'm sorry, we can't do that.
Chair, perhaps
Yes.
I could just...
I'm struggling with the human rights one,
Yes,
because
absolutely.
I think it's related not to the planning application we've got in front of us. It's not that I don't empathise with where we're going, and I agree with what Councillor Smythe
I take
said.
that on board,
Absolutely,
Chair, but what I
and
would say is
ultimately
it's one of our main considerations on the front page.
Yeah, no. But I think that's about the planning application and the change of use in relation to human rights is how I understand it, rather than any awful and terrible experience that someone's had from a building which is done under permitted development, which is not the application we've got in front of us. That's what I'm struggling with. As a human level, I absolutely empathise, but we have to stick to the job that we're meant to be doing.
That's absolutely a point, and perfectly valid and very clear. I would also go on to discuss a previous and recent planning inspector decision where the planning committee considered and attached significant weight to the effect on the impact on close neighbours that have suffered from particular issues, mental health issues, I think, if I remember correctly, and the consideration of the public sector equality duty. And significant weight was attached to the impact on neighbours in that case. And the planning inspector looked at the decision overall and was critical of that, as there was no specific evidence that the residential use that was effectively being authorised would have any greater impact than the residential use that would exist with a large-scale family potentially occupying the property. And on that basis, I think there's clear precedent that the authority ought not be going down the route of justifying a planning decision on human rights grounds, which are very similar considerations to that particular case. And in that case, I'm looking at Ian. I'm fairly confident that was one of the cases that costs were awarded. Yes.
I think there was almost unanimous decision on that one, wasn't there, to reject? Okay. Right. Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I'm happy to remove that. The fact that we can't take into consideration the mental health of the two young children that live next door, that's fine. Okay, I'll withdraw. Thank
you very much. I think it makes it simpler. So we have a proposal in front of us which we'll go to a vote on. I think Councillor Madwick gave the wording as better than I can repeat it, but it was essentially around overdevelopment, poor standard of accommodation, details about the ceiling height of room 1 and the thresholds of the room, size of the rooms, and then the impact on parking.
If it pleases the solicitor, I'm happy to email it to him preceding this vote.
Okay. So we have that proposal before us, and it is seconded by Councillor Cordy. So we'll go to a vote on that, and that's clearly not supporting officers' recommendations, so we just need to go to that vote first. So all those in favour of that proposal in front of us? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we've forgotten about the SPA mitigation. We'd need to have that as a technical.
Oh, yes, we'd
third
have
reason.
the SPA.
Apologies.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. I was forgetting that one. Okay, so we'll go back to the vote. All those in favour of the proposal from Councillor Madwick? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those against? 4. My casting vote. So that motion falls. So then we go to the next motion, which was Councillor Smythe, seconded by Councillor Mason, to move officer's recommendation for conditional approval for planning permission. All those in favour? 4. All those against? 3. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Therefore, that motion is carried and conditional planning permission is granted. Thank you very much for all the people who did deputations, and thank you. Shall we have a 10-minute let's be realistic about this. Do we want a break where people can go and get a bit of lunch, in which case we'll do quarter of an hour, or just a loo break, in which case it can be lunch, quarter of an hour? Quarter of an hour. We'll do quarter of an hour. So we'll start again by 22. Okay, let's make a start. So we're past 22.
Chairman, can we leave it to 1:45? Because if Councillor Madgwick is delayed... Sorry?
Okay, so
In which
he
case
won't
he will
be able
not be able
he
to vote.
won't be able to vote on this agenda item, but I'm sure, does he know that? Yeah, okay. All right, then, let's restart the meeting. Thank you. Thank you for that update. Are we started again? Okay. All right then, so we now, after our little break, we're coming back and we're on agenda item 4, which is 134 to 142 Commercial Road, or what is often known as the old Debenham site. So I'll hand over to Ian, who's doing the presentation for this.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll try and keep this relatively brief. It is a large and complex application, but one members, I'm sure, have had the opportunity to look at. This is an outline application with access and scale. So the height of the buildings, primarily, as the matters before your consideration, as well, of course, the principle of the development. So the specific appearance, the specific layouts, the landscaping are all reserved matters for a future determination. I think that's an important distinction to identify. The application has changed during its submission. It has reduced in both the height of buildings and the number of buildings. So we now have a scheme covering that area, which you can see is the former Debenhams building on that commercial road, Arundel Street corner, and the car park taking you down to Slindon Station Street. And the various other dead-end streets almost that we have there currently in the site. That is being proposed to be redeveloped into 3 new buildings. Well, there's the site. I think you all know it. I won't dwell on this if we keep going through. So 3 new buildings. Building A, and I'll just pause on this, which is the one on the front corner, so the Arundel Street, Commercial Street corner. That's a 29-storey building with Class C, so retail or similar, on the ground floor, and then flats on the upper floor. Building B in the centre of the site. This is a 20-storey building. There's a proposal for a cafe, so it'll be Class C again, as you can see there on the western side, the left of that building, and then flats on the upper floor. And building C on the Station Road, the southern part of the site. This is a co-living building, 16 stories, with the various amenities of co-living on the lower floors and the co-living units on the upper floors with a further amenity dispersed and on the top roof space as well. We'll come to break down the buildings, I think, in a moment. So A on the top, B in the middle, C at the bottom, just for reference for discussions. The existing building is demolished, fairly obviously. So your scale plans for approval are therefore working on those, because this is a outline in those zones of development. So as I say, they equate to a 29-storey, 20-storey, 16-storey, but there's some lower zones around the edges. You can see D there, which is a substation building, which is lower. Let me go to the next slide. You won't be able to see those, but that's the height above ordnance datum that equates those issues. And as you can see, building A there does have some setting down around the edges of it where it interacts with the public realm in those pedestrianised areas. Access is for approval. You can see here how a vehicular access wraps around C and wraps around B. That is your prime vehicular routing for that. All of that, is it peach on your screen? Yeah, peachy colour, let's say. This becomes free access, public access space. Some of it is, of course, already accessible in that way. You can see the 2 purple crossings of those road spaces. As you see, that is your pedestrian route from Station Road coming through past the west side of C and B and the east side of A up into that, through that existing pedestrian passageway onto Arundel Street. So that's a large new route through the site established. which would obviously have the opportunity to be landscaped and provided as public realm, which we have some indicative plans for. But it's this access and that scale which are the key issues, as well as the principal development we are looking at. I will just go to the next one, which is the swept path analysis. Those roads will obviously be used primarily for servicing, refuse being a key example, and I will just take you first to a key point on the SMAT. We do have a holding objection. We've had some clarifications from the Highway Authority. A holding objection from the Highway Authority. They feel that this plan shows that there's some sort of overriding of the curb spaces with that turning space available for heavy goods vehicles, in particular refuse collection, fire tenders, the similar. We are satisfied, however, that there is enough room in the site to do that. If this indicative one hasn't quite mapped that, layout is a reserve matter, a specific grant being condition, as well as being perfectly clear with the applicant that will have to be tidied up at the layout stage, will resolve that matter, and there is more than adequate room to ensure that there is space to move both the fire tender and refuse vehicles and other service vehicles through the site to get to the appropriate locations. This is the illustrative ground floor and shows you some of the illustrative layout. So while scale is fixed, all those internal walls are effectively up for grabs when we get to the layout reserve matters at a later date. But it's obviously incumbent upon the applicant to demonstrate that their scheme can accommodate the scale of development in terms of unit numbers and activities that we would expect to do and have discussed in the report. So this ground floor, as you can see, active public ground floor on that top left, that commercial and turning into Arundel Street, and then the active private entrance to the flats as you carry on along that Arundel Street frontage, all on Building A, and then the back office of flats, as you would usually expect to see, refuse, plant, cycle storage. Similar as you come down to Block B, that active public cafe space along the western edge, the active private entrance to Block B is on that southern side, and then the northeastern side is your back office refuse cycle plant. Block C on the bottom there is the co-living space, so this is all very active and private, but in a co-living space. There's 358 co-living units proposed, so it's private for those residents. Obviously, managed access can be provided through appropriate management. So there's a lot more activity in here. You've got lounges, and they're proposing some co-working space for residents, as well as the cycle and refuse, etc., all on that ground floor through this illustration. This is your site landscaping, again purely indicative, but shows you the opportunity that this scheme gives you to reinforce and green up as well, which would be nice in this part of the city, that pedestrian routing through from station all the way through to Arundel. So you'll see in the middle there, there is an opportunity for some high quality public realm, both green planting, but also adjacent to external seating in their proposed cafe area, so almost a miniature pocket park there, and there's some interesting suggestions the applicant has made of how to maximise the benefits of that public realm, which is obviously that pedestrian route through from south to north, north to south. Coming to the individual buildings, I've probably touched on the key elements of this. That zooms you in and you can see the large retail unit proposed on Commercial Road, and then as you bend round in Arundel Street and into that new route through, that is your access space, the active private space for the flats here, and then the central core, obviously, for all your necessary servicing, plant, cycle storage, etc. As you go up, there is some further amenity space on the first floor, and you start to see the first of the proposed flats in Block A, which has a total of 222 proposed C3 units in this block, which starts here on the first floor and rises up a further 27 floors. I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah. So there is an example of one of the upper floors, and as you can see, the building is stepping in slightly as we go up to improve its human scale. We've got some CGIs of that in a moment. As you get up to the higher floors, the building comes tighter in, and it forms this much more compact and an elegant view to rise up to its tall building status thereafter. up to a roof, where they are proposing a roof terrace for the amenity of residents. So that's the building as proposed. You can see those recesses that was seen on the indicative outcome. Again, appearance, layout is indicative, as I say, but that provides both texture and nuance to the building. Officers have put a lot of time in, and the applicant has done very responsive work to that feedback to maximise the quality of this output, albeit it's all indicative, as I say, at this stage, because this is obviously a key building, will have long views across the city to this important city centre site. And you can see just at the bottom there how, at this stage, how that interacts with the human scale of the commercial centre as well. But we've got some better images of that in a moment. That's the other elevation. This is from Commercial Road. As you can see how that more 3 stories matches into the adjacent. Is that a bank there? I think it's a bank building next to it. So moving to building B, the building in the middle, this is again residential units. This is 144 units on the upper floors, proposing a cafe on the frontage there, maximising that access with the public realm in the middle, and then the entrance lobby on the south. You will see some parking sneaking in around the edges here. There is very, very limited parking, operational parking it's being called there, and blue badge parking. It is, let's not muck around, it's obviously a city centre site between your main high street and your station. It's not proposing a lot of parking. The applicant has looked at what they think they need for deliveries and blue badge users, etc., and proposed a limited number of parking spaces overall to meet those needs. Upper floors are flats. You know what flats look like. Again, similar fundamental form, slightly different architectural treatment as suggested here, but again, taking that palette through, again, that recess is giving it texture to make an elegant building up to 20 stories in height in this location. So the co-living building, now most members won't have seen co-living before. We've presented one down in the Hard a few years ago. That was never actually built out. But co-living is, of course, a different way of delivering housing with smaller individual units and a substantially larger shared amenity spaces for the individual benefits of the community that is created within inside a co-living building. This is a 16-storey building, 358 co-living spaces. The ground floor, you've got a large co-working and lounge space and a large and attractive lobby space, as well as a small management and post suite to manage the issues. The back office associated areas, so storage, plant, cycle, refuse storage, as you would expect to see. The first floor, again, all amenity spaces, so that lobby rises up through that feature staircase. You've got a large communal kitchen, which you can see is the top left of that, and dining spaces. The bottom of it is gym, media room, laundry spaces, and then obviously more plant needed to support all of these outcomes. You go up into the further floors. This is a typical floor. So most of them are the standard size. You can see there the standard sizes are about 18 square metres, and there's a couple on each floor larger units. You can see them on the flanks either there. They're about 24 square metres. Thank you. So they are the size. These co-living studio spaces have all the necessary amenities for day-to-day living. So they have a kitchenette, which you can see in the top left of either of those rooms, a little hob, little sink, space for a microwave, that kind of thing. Enough room for a little table and chairs, enough room obviously for a bed, ensuite space, and enough room for a desk or and other furniture. So they are, often compared to that top end of student accommodation as an idea, but these are fully functional C3 spaces, one could argue, as they have all the necessary minimum basic amenities, but they are very small and are only acceptable because they do fall, of course, below national design space standards. They're only acceptable because of that very large proportion of additional amenity that these residents have and choose to have. This is a choice to live in these spaces and live in a different way than a family home or an HMO or a studio apartment might give you. This is that mixture of living in in a cooperative way with your neighbours. Throughout the building as you go up, as you can see just on the right hand side there, an amenity space is provided. Haven't designed that would be additional kitchen spaces, additional dining spaces, additional lounge spaces as you get to that layout stage. So that's dotted through up every third floor or so. The roof space, a very large further amenity there, so they call it a lounge bar. There's a private event space, a big outside terrace as well, so again some further amenity up on that top floor. Similar palette, again slightly different design features. The archways have been taken off of this illustration to a more rectangular space. That more reflects Crown Place next to it, I would expect, is their inspiration there. Appearance being a reserved matter, I would remind you again, but again, just demonstrating that a building of this bulk and scale is something we are looking at, does fit comfortably in this space. So there is hopefully a useful issue that's looking across the fountain, that's bottom left, at Building A, Building B, Building C. They are tall buildings. Crown Place, of course, is a tall building in this location already, so we're comfortable that this is an appropriate location for such things, and these buildings are perfectly capable, and we feel these are good examples of such capability, of being designed in a way that is appropriate for the townscape of this part of the city. So this is a broader townscape imagery. You can see these are consents that we have done, and some are delivered, some are not, in the wider city, that provide a feeling of that scale, which obviously forms part of your emerging local plan and your intent to take the opportunity of using this most sustainable part of your city for higher density living. Coming into some CGIs, that's not that helpful, I think, a CGI, looking sort of straight down at the Arundel Street junction. I think we've got a better one. Yeah, there we go. That gives you that, how we would expect a final appearance to ensure you're achieving something that works at human scale in the street scene, and then set back and above it is, of course, the place to provide that additional residential accommodation to meet the needs of the city. I think that is, yeah, leave it on that if you like, thank you. So just to finish off on your SMAT, as I say, just to update on the Highway Authority's position with a holding objection, which is not really different from what we've concluded within there, to note additional letter of objection. We have one letter of support. When we wrote the report, we now have one letter of objection as well, so that's been covered in the SMAT. National Union have raised no objection, and we've just provided some additional clarification around the affordable housing position. I should say there is a notable financial book deficit on the scheme, which means there is no affordable housing being proposed in this, so we would need a review mechanism, which we talk about in the report but didn't include in the heads of terms listed in paragraph 9.15. 157, so we've added that in, and just clarification on the calculation for vacant building credit. That's a bit of a moot point, however, because that's what reduces your affordable housing need as a policy, but they can't afford any affordable housing, so it becomes it's just for clarity and accuracy rather than making any notable change to the recommendation. We do not have a 5-year land supply. You need to use vacant sites in sustainable locations to provide new housing for the city. This is probably one of your most prominent vacant sites in the city, if we don't talk about Tipner, and we try not to. And therefore, we are very happy to recommend it for approval. We feel it's a good use of the site, and we are confident that a good scheme can be designed in the reserve matters stage in line with the illustrations that you've seen today.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Madrick's come back into the meeting. Can I just check? I know he will not be able to vote on this because he's missed the presentation, but does he can he contribute to the debate, or is he sit out completely from this meeting? Just want to be clear before we get to a point where he might want to say something.
To help, I'm happy to sit out,
Okay.
just because I think for
fairness,
it's
Yes.
fair.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to check before we got into a discussion. Okay, so we've got one deputation from Mr. Salmon, who's the agent. Thank you for waiting all this time when it was meant to be first on the agenda. But you have 6 minutes. Oh. Yeah, they've all gone. You're all on your own. So you have 6 minutes to do your deputation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to place on record our sincere thanks to the planning officers and the wider council team who have worked closely with us over a considerable period in shaping these proposals. Their constructive engagement has been invaluable in refining the scheme to ensure that what is now before you is now both policy compliant and deliverable. When the planning application was submitted in 2024, it followed an extensive period of pre-application discussion. The original scheme transpired to be more aspirational than achievable. Since then, we now have a development partner who wishes to deliver its redevelopment. Indeed, the new architecture and design team have been recommended by the developer to ensure it is designed effectively and can come to fruition. This has resulted in the revised scheme that is now before you. Members will be familiar with the site. The former Debenhams building has stood vacant since the store closed in 2020, following the national collapse of the department store chain. Today, it represents a large, problematic and underused brownfield site at the very heart of Portsmouth City Centre. The application, as revised, seeks outline consent for its redevelopment, replacing the existing building with a mixed-use scheme comprising of 3 buildings, delivering new retail and commercial space, new homes for professionals, and high-quality public realm. In total, the proposal will provide up to 724 homes, including build-to-rent apartments and co-living accommodation, alongside active ground floor uses, new public spaces that reconnect the site with Commercial Road and the station area. The proposed apartments and co-living units are aimed at providing quality accommodation for professionals and young graduates in a community setting with office spaces, communal facilities and direct access to multimodal public transport connections. The city has historically been challenged to keep graduates and newly qualified professionals within the city itself as they embark on their respective professional careers, and this scheme would meet that need. We already know that there is a growing demand for NHS employee accommodation, MOD staff housing and other key worker homes in the city. Co-living is a communal living concept that has been successfully implemented in other major cities and offers tenants with quality facilities, on-site active management and simplified rent structures that are relatively inexpensive and inclusive of all bills. In addition to seeking positive and effective boost to Commercial Road, members will know that Portsmouth continues to face significant housing delivery challenges, with housing supply currently below the level required by national policy. The officer report that the council cannot demonstrate a full 5-year housing land supply and that delivery has been well below the target in recent years. Against that backdrop, this proposal will make a very significant contribution to housing delivery in a location that national and local planning policy clearly identifies as the most sustainable place for growth, the city centre, immediately adjacent to the railway station and the public transport network. But this scheme is about far more than just housing numbers. It is fundamentally a regeneration project. The redevelopment of this prominent site will replace an empty and declining building with a vibrant mixed-use development that introduces new residents, new activity and new investment into Commercial Road. The scheme will also create new public realm, public pedestrian routes and landscape spaces. Importantly, the proposals maintain active commercial frontages at ground level, supporting the vitality and viability of the city centre in line with local planning policy. Members will also note the design has evolved significantly and positively through discussion with officers. Extensive technical work has been undertaken covering matters such as transport, daylight and sunlight, microclimate, heritage, ecology and flood risk. As the officer report sets out, the majority of statutory consultees raised no objection. We do note the later responses from highways and we know that we can effectively meet those successfully through reserve matters. While the scheme does introduce taller buildings into the skyline, officers conclude that heritage impacts would amount to less than substantial harm and the public benefits of development clearly outweigh any harm. Ultimately, what is before you today is an opportunity to bring forward the comprehensive redevelopment on one of the most important regeneration sites in the city centre. It will deliver hundreds of much-needed homes in a highly sustainable location, new commercial activity and jobs, improved public spaces and connectivity, and renewed vitality for the Commercial Road area. Members, the proposal has been carefully worked through with officers who have recommended it for approval. On behalf of the applicant and the development team, I hope very much you're able to support the officer recommendations and resolve to grant outline planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salmon, for your deputation. Okay, that's the end of the deputations. Over to members of the committee. Any questions? Councillor Mason.
I have a number of questions. If we look at the plan, which was the plan which was shown of the whole site, it does strike me that there is a wide area at the west and some fairly narrow areas at the east. Is there a problem here with wind funneling, which will affect the high buildings? That's my first question. I've got a few others, but that one, wind funneling and the microclimate.
Yeah, so there's no major impact in those areas, actually. Over on Commercial Road, where you've got the tall building, there is some impacts there. A wind mitigation strategy has been included, which involves some baffling of microclimate implications. Again, that will all be very much influenced by that specific design area of appearance, which would be picked up along there. And obviously the roof terraces have their own microclimate challenges, again, to be picked up at reserve matters. So yes, there are implications, but none of them are reasons to have great concern and withhold permission at this stage.
My second question on the site concerns the frontage on Arundel Street. This is a major commercial street, yet it would appear that the eastern part of Building A on Arundel Street is not in commercial use. Is this in accordance with our city plan? And should we not press for this to be in commercial use?
So specific layout is a reserve matter. So it isn't nailed down yet, is the short answer. The illustration here shows it as a residence lounge. This is a building with 200 and I'll get the right number for A, yeah, 222 flats in there. So it's a very active space, albeit not a commercial space. The nature of town centres is changing. Residential use is a town centre use. It is not inappropriate to have it within a town centre, nor does your policy wish to support it. There is that balance to strike. 222 people coming in and out of the door here and into the shops of the city centre is a better outcome for the vitality and viability of this high street, rather than if you were forcing them out the bottom end away from the shops. That would not be particularly, just to potentially create another small unit along that Arundel Street frontage. If they were designing it to have bins or a blank wall, I'd share those concerns. But this is still an active space, albeit a private space, and that is inevitable when you are trying to get a large number of residences from those upper store accommodation into the high street and out into the public realm.
Okay, and my third question concerns on this Building A, there'll be a lot of servicing required. Is there other adequate servicing bays for commercial vehicles to come in and do the servicing?
Yeah, so you'll see in the bottom of this image, there is one bay where obviously vehicles can reverse in and service into that central core, which provides access through into the point there. On the right-hand side of this image is your open space. A lot of that will have to be hard standing to allow turning for larger vehicles, but it can be obviously attractive hard standing and will be utilised for the passing and repassing of pedestrians when not being used to turn vehicles. So we are satisfied that is a space that would meet those needs. There is only one, it's 144, I want to say top of my head, yeah, square metres, 400, got the wrong way around, 451 square metres. So it's a reasonable shop, but it's not a department store. You don't need that scale of servicing. We are comfortable that one bay access is fit for purpose, as well as obviously to do that servicing for the residential blocks as well.
Councillor Smythe.
I have some questions as well, more than one. If we can go to the CGI, which shows the 3 blocks, that would be the easiest place for me to start. Yeah, that one. First of all, I know our detailed plans in the draft local strategic plan do show walkways and areas where you can walk away from cars and with the benefit of plants and so forth around. Does this public right-of-way through the development form part of that network?
So we haven't got down to this degree of granularity in the local plan and things like our green grid and some of our permeable issues, but absolutely it does. I would note that while landscaping is a reserve matter, you'll hear me say this a lot, so apologies. So that is final issues to be resolved. This does provide a far more pedestrian focused. It's accessing a couple of dozen parking spaces and service bays, so it's not entirely pedestrianised, but very, very much pedestrian-focused route running in parallel with Edinburgh Street, Slindon Street, etc. So it does provide a very useful connectivity space and accessible space for pedestrians and active travel from Station Street down to the Arundel Street junction. So it may in fact be a preferable routing for pedestrians coming out of the station or coming down from the northern parts of the city centre, and it is well suited for that. Obviously you get that narrow space around the bus stops, etc., that we have on Edinburgh at the moment, which do cause some challenges on the pavement widths down there. So yes, it does very much reinforce that pedestrian first hierarchical position of movement.
That's good, that's great. I seem to recall reading in the whole report, I read the mention of a playground. Is that the case? And that would be located away from traffic and traffic pollution. And would it also be somewhere that could and would be used by the public, of course? And
yes.
The third question about that is, would it contain accessible equipment?
Yeah. Very much the reserve matter degree of detail there, but yes, what they've shown is
could
that there
it?
is...
I should say, could it?
Yeah, yes, it could. Yeah, absolutely. It is that central area you can see here on the western side of Building B, which has a range of opportunities there. They're thinking about half of that would be outdoor seating for the cafe, and obviously a pedestrian route through the site. There is then the public highway bit that services round the edge, used probably more occasionally, but all of that, unfortunately coloured grey in this image, all of that grey issue underneath those trees, that's where you can have play equipment, local areas of play, etc., and obviously all those opportunities that would bring for the public realm. So.
Good, thank you. That sounds good too. I noticed that, I mean, that piece of land really doesn't have much biodiversity at the moment. When you're calculating biodiversity net gain, how do you do it in a site which is so clearly lacking in biodiversity?
Yeah, there are factors built into the standard metric calculator that deals with highly urbanised sites and therefore the very minimal outcome. They've been applied and we satisfy the applicant has done those calculations. So there is clearly a lot of opportunity for net gain and as a percentage point significantly higher just through good landscaping rather than having to go out and specifically plan for biodiversity. So this is undeniably something that can be sorted out and resolved as a overall improvement for urban greening factor, canopy cover and biodiversity. But landscaping is a reserve matter, so obviously will be washed out then. Yeah.
Thank you. And it follows on from the motion we passed in full council yesterday about reducing impermeable hard standings and taking the opportunity, obviously SUDS exists for new developments, but also having permeable surfaces so that we're not going to burden the sewage system with rain runoff. Is that a possibility?
Yep, SUDS is built into this as a concept and conditions are proposed to that nature. This is one of the many advantages of development. You've got an old department store and an old impermeable piece of hard standing and you can leave it there forever if you like. If you want it to change, development is the tool that makes it change, and obviously the hard standings that will go back in will be very much permeable. There will be attenuation, etc. One of the big advantages of tall buildings is obviously that gives you lots of ground floor area. There's actually, almost, I don't think it's quite less ground coverage, but rather than having a short, wide department store, you've got smaller, tall buildings, and thus a lot of opportunities to get trees in, get play spaces in, get permeable soakaways in, and achieve 3,100% biodiversity net gain, as my team have just told me. So.
Good. I think that's a real contribution that could be made. Chair, I have got a couple of other questions to ask, but I'm willing to stop for a moment, and then as long as I can ask those questions later.
Has anyone else got any questions? Councillor Atwell, Councillor Vallely, and then back to you, Councillor Smythe.
I just wanted to
just
pick up on...
turn your mic off, Councillor Smythe.
Just wanted to,
Councillor Smythe, can you just turn your mic off?
Sorry.
Thank you. That's right.
wanted to pick up on cycle parking. So there is a condition attached, but it doesn't talk to the lack of spaces for cycles. Is it possible to add something in the condition that it will meet the parking standard, the SPD, sorry, on cycle parking? Because obviously we want this, it's a sustainable location, etc., but it's significantly short of the standard.
Yeah, so we've looked at the layout and the opportunities for it, and we are satisfied in conjunction with the Highway Authority that the cycle provision is appropriate for this location. Yes, it's looking at the SPD, trying to find those balances between them and not dominate the ground floor of those spaces by cycling. That would be resolved in that layout reserve matters stage, but we can certainly impose an informative to inform the reserve matters if there is a concern that the committee wishes to raise.
For me, that would be useful, so it's a matter of record that we have considered and thought about that.
Thank you, Councillor.
I could just add to that, there has been discussions with the applicant that they're well aware of the issues raised by the Portsmouth Cycle Forum, and that in terms of the shortfall on the, so to say, one-to-one provision, they're certainly anticipating they would be able to accommodate additional cycle parking as part of the reserve matters layout, on basement levels, for example, readjusting some of the plant rooms. So it's very, very possible that those numbers of spaces will increase.
Thank you. Councillor Vallely.
Can you just tell us about what's happening on the roof? Will there be an opportunity for green in there, or dry and clothes, or will it be usable?
So yes, I think all three rooms, I'm going to say that, looking spectrally around, are provided as terraces. The co-living is obviously the more active terrace. They're proposing a lot of detailed design on there. It's an important part of the amenity offer, but there are outdoor terraces on each three roofs. At 29-storey, I wouldn't be recommending drying clothes, I would say, but there are, again, wind mitigation designs they put in to baffle it, so it becomes usable space, and obviously that would have greening appropriate at that scale. You're not going to be planting large trees up there, obviously, but yes, there is outdoor fresh air access for residents on every one of the three buildings.
Back to Councillor Smythe.
There's a lot of concern about Swifts and Swift bricks. This is a detail that clearly will come back later, but that is in our draft local plan, and so we would be looking for...
And there's a condition for it, yes.
And there's a condition for it, yes, thank you. I saw that. That's just to reassure me. That the next section of my questions is about the co-living units. I believe our draft local plan does make a provision that any co-living units built particularly at this sort of scale, should be capable of being changed back into normal self-contained couple or family accommodation. I suppose I in many ways like the idea of co-living, and I like the fact that there is access to leisure and meeting facilities and so on and so forth. But, we don't quite know how the market's going to react to this. And if we get to the stage of that building C being under-occupied, then I think it could be actually a sort of slippery slope down to being very horrible place to live, actually. You wouldn't want to be there with just a few people. You'd want to see it full and buzzing and full of friendships being made and so on and so forth. So will we be able to ensure, when you come to look at the reserved matters, that it is actually quite easy to change all or part of the building into ordinary, what I would call C3 dwellings of various sizes?
Yeah, so I think, again, obviously I'll start with the caveat layout being the reserve matter. The concept within the emerging policy on that is that what we do want to ensure is we're not building white elephants and future conversion would occur. There's practical challenges around the management of that. I think it's very hard to convert part of a co-living building. It's not impossible, but hard to have a lot of access control issues, part of a co-living building into C3. But the primary purpose around the drafting of that policy, which obviously focuses on purpose-built student accommodation as well, is that we just need to make sure that that is conceptually available. Obviously, planning permission is a point in time. You know, no developer is going to build this unless they have the market confidence. No one has a crystal ball, though. It is only market confidence. We've reviewed the illustrative plans. That's all we've got at the moment. It is a reserve matter, and we are satisfied that yes, you can combine a couple of those units or any number of those units into flat rather than individual issues. The layout works well for that. They haven't got an abnormally formed building that would prevent that occurring. You would be knocking out those internal walls and reconfiguring them as necessary. It has all the necessary dual cores for access, etc. So if a conversion was needed at some point in the future as market tastes change, this illustrative layout shows that is entirely possible, and obviously we'll be doing that same test when we get to the actual layout for the reserve matters stage.
I mean, Chair, it looks to me like that is the case. I mean, they are fairly simple layouts and there's sort of a natural division that could be done. Is that the sort of thing that we need to put a condition on at this stage? Or is it, can we leave it in your hands and in the fact that our draft local plan includes that provision?
I think you'll have to. There is no real condition you can impose. Obviously, a planning application is a consent to do what is on the approved plans, recognising reserve matters, etc. So we can't put in a condition to control something that could be decades in the future. Okay. What we're looking at is, are these things capable? Could you merge unit 1, 2 and 3 into a flat? We've looked at and said, yes, that is plausible, that would work as a reasonable solution, and satisfied ourselves with that, and thus it does meet that policy obligation.
Thank you. Now there's another question. There's a mention in the SMAT about the calculations being done about affordable housing. I think it's in the SMAT, isn't it? Or is it certainly in the report? Yeah, yes. Financial ability, the second page of the SMAT. But just referring a little bit to that, obviously you will be looking at the viability and affordable housing in the future once the building is designed fully and so forth, and taking note of a different sort of economic climate and market. Could the I'm wondering if there's any way in which the co-living would be used for some elements of affordable housing, or could be, or is that out of scope?
No, very much in scope. So in the emerging plan, again, which I'll be optimistic for the plan or pessimistic for the scheme. I'm not sure that the emerging plan will have very much material weight by the time we get to the reserve matters for this scheme. We do recognise that that co-living is a type of housing we would expect to see affordable housing, so it would be a policy requirement. Your affordable housing policy now and emerging is of course overlaid with the viability point. So the viability of all of the development, the retail, the C3 and the co-living all forms part of it, and it's currently a book deficit. Consequently, there is no affordable housing in any of those tenures, but we are, as it says in the report that was missed out from the bullet points of the HO, of the heads of terms, we will be having a review mechanism, and that will look at the viability of the scheme as a whole. Indeed, may look at the scheme in phase as well, depending on how a developer brings it forward, so that if there is any change in market conditions, and it is in fact not a deficit managed by the patient capital of the developer, but a profit that we can take the betterment out of in line with your affordable housing policy, both for the C3 and for the co-living. Obviously, that review mechanism will let us to do that in the future.
Just a related question. I mean, didn't want to imply that I would like to see all affordable housing being in the co-living area, because we have a desperate need for 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units. But I understand the logic of what you're saying, and thank you for that reassurance. The last thing I wanted to talk about was if you could put up the plan which shows, the plan that Councillor Mason had up, which shows the overall the other one, the next one, which is shows the retail and the lounge and things like that. Sorry? Yes, that's the one. Building A. I presume, I mean, at what stage do we get to a situation where, let me paint a scenario, where the developers decided that retail on that corner of the diagram there really wasn't going to be able to be sold to anything of any quality in Commercial Road, given the decline that the shopping has faced in that road. At what point would they have to come back and get a new outline permission, or would that all be done by details? I'm just imagining if that, for example, proved unviable, because I'm a bit nervous about the size of that. It's such an important site. Yeah. If the, would that be done by variation, or would it be done by having to say, well, we've got to start again with the overall outline permission as well, a full application?
It will depend on the nature of the variation and the timing of the development. So it'll be fixed. This is purely illustrative. Yeah. It'll be fixed at that layout stage, and obviously the acceptability of the layout will be judged against our policies for both design and town centres. So we will be requiring a commercial ground floor. The applicant shares that vision for the site as well. So I mean, no doubt about that. Whether that's 1 unit or 2 units, whether it bends around the corner a bit more, that's obviously what the applicant will work up with their master developers as they move into the next stage, should consent be granted in outline today. That'll be fixed at a reserve matters stage, and that's what they will have to then build out accordingly. If during the construction they wish to vary that, they can come back in and that would be a variation of the layout principle. I doubt it would depart from the outline principles because they are relatively flexible, and obviously that could be a further submission on reserve matters or indeed a minor variation under the tools available at that time. Government is looking at tools to ensure planning permissions have the greatest degree of flexibility at the moment. Post-construction or post-substantive construction, obviously if it's not being viably used as a retail unit, an individual planning application could occur to change the use of that Class E unit into something else. I would be surprised if there was not demand for a Class E use in that space. We've seen very good uptake of in fact, traditional retail as well as food and beverage in Commercial Road. It has very, very low vacancies issues, and as many members may be aware, there has recently been a vote to introduce a business improvement district on Commercial Road to further support the business development. So I would have every grounds to be optimistic on the occupation of that unit, albeit we are still very early in the planning process.
Thank you, that's reassuring about the retail. I suppose I was also trying to tease out at what point do you say to the applicant, I mean, I quite like the layout, quite like the layout, I'm happy with the principles of all of this, but at what point do the variations become so much that you have to ask them to go back to the drawing board, or they ask to go back to the drawing board?
Dangerous area of hypotheticals, obviously, but obviously if they removed all commercial activity from the scheme, that wouldn't be in line with the outline consent. One could make a legal technical answer that you could try and shoehorn it in, but it would need approval, and we wouldn't be approving that approval because it wouldn't meet our policies, because that would be a matter to be dealt with in the layout reserve matters. So it's a bit of a dangerous hypothetical. These are illustrative to show how it could work, but these are very mature work, and there's been a lot of work put in between the applicant and officers. So I would anticipate a scheme will be not materially different. There'll be different architectural treatments, I'm sure, but not materially different in its fundamentals to that which the illustration shows. It's a relatively constrained site in terms of its elbow room to do something different. So I would imagine the applicant would want to capitalise on the effort he's put in to date to get a scheme that's acceptable, should members so wish, to vote on it today to move it forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. Councillor Mason.
2 further questions, if I may. One substantive, one procedural. The substantive one is that paragraph 9138, we look at questions of servicing. Has consideration been given to the possibility of neighbourhood heating schemes here? or are the buildings going to be individually serviced for heating, and has any consideration been given to the type of heating which will be provided within these buildings?
I'm going to give you two slightly different answers to two aspects of the question. Has consideration been given? Yes, there's been discussions across the range of options for it. There obviously isn't an established district heating network here, but it's obviously something that the council has endorsed and supported conceptually, and certainly there's some conversations around those neighbourhood heating have been had with the applicants. They are in that reserve matters stage as how we'd work through all of those systems. I mean, there's a fabric first logic to it, which obviously is a principal point, but when you start getting into, is there any room for PV with the roof terraces up there, and the air source heat pumps, the district heating, all of these ground source, all of these options would be explored as we get into the more detailed design stages, and the applicant has commenced those conversations as part of the pre-app already. Yeah.
The procedural one is coming from, really, from what you have just said. Assuming that we do approve this, and I hope we do, the recommendations 2 and 3 are giving delegated authority, recommendation 1 as well. And this is the biggest scheme which we have looked at as a planning committee for a number of years. And it is one which is ongoing and developing. Can reports be provided for the members of the committee as this scheme develops, so that we know what is happening?
Yes, I've been certainly happy to do so. Certainly, I think I would be inevitably informing the portfolio holder for planning in their weekly Wednesday meeting. So there would be a route through that, and obviously those same information for those key milestones as the 106 is negotiated and published, and decisions like to be issued and so on could be shared with the planning committee based on the portfolio holder or chairman's wishes. Yeah.
Yes, as the portfolio holder, I think it's important that all members of the committee should be kept up to date on a scheme as important as this as it develops.
Thank you. I'm going to just jump in with a question, quick. It's almost like a rhetorical question, but I want to have it on public record. This is a private development, but it's on highways land, so there could never be a chance that walk through, which is available now to everyone, could be closed off as part of a closed development.
Just to answer it as a question, obviously there are routes through that form part of the public highway network. Some elements obviously may be closed off where safety with the service bays, etc., could perhaps need security for public safety issues to be worked out at the reserve matters stage. But yes, obviously a route through which is currently available, which currently goes, obviously there's various routes, Surrey Street and Slindon Street, etc. These are public highways, and agreement will be needed with the Highway Authority on the redirection of any public rights through those areas. But closing them off altogether is not something the applicant has proposed, and not something I imagine the Highway Authority would countenance.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Smythe.
I just wanted to build on what Councillor Mason said. I mean, I would expect some of these reserve matters to come back to committee. This is a huge development, and this is something which we will be criticised about if people don't like the what's arriving. I wouldn't propose all details come back to us, but I would want to make have the opportunity to understand, to question, and to hopefully to approve the overall appearance of the 3 towers from various angles, and the shadows it'll cast, and the colour of the brickwork, or it won't be brickwork. But I don't want to find myself in a number of years' time being, attacked by the whole architectural community in Portsmouth, who says, why did you allow that building to be blue, or whatever. And I would like to see that coming back to committee. We have precedents for that. I would like to see coming back to the committee the management arrangements and the layout for the co-housing, which I know we have been in the past able to discuss, and so forth, and a final chance to approve the landscaping and the walk-through. I don't personally want to see more, but I don't think that it's appropriate to burden officers with agreeing all the kind of design details of such an enormous development taking place in our very heart of our city centre, which will, I hope, contribute considerably to regenerating the area. I'm all for it, but I don't think it's something that I would want to delegate entirely to officers.
Probably just to resolve some confusion, I took Councillor Mason's question on the delegation of this, which is obviously the resolution of the final draft of the decision notice and the Section 106 agreement for the outline permission. Future applications, whether for reserved matters, submissions or condition discharging, will be dealt with in accordance with the scheme of delegations. If they're promoted to committee, they'll come to committee. If we have lots of objections, they'll come to committee subject to any changes to national processes in that area. So that's not what I took, and Councillor Mason doesn't appear to be disagreeing with me, to be Councillor Mason's desire to be kept up to date. That's the resolution of this outline consent, not the many future consents that will be needed to turn this outline consent into a deliverable, fully consented scheme with all its conditions and reserve matters managed, which we dealt with in the normal way.
Okay, so we would get an opportunity to see again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I mean, I raised that particularly as I know the our new regulations coming about out about these matters, and just wanted to be reassured. Thank you for that.
Councillor Atwell.
People living at Crown Place will be 20 metres away from the nearest point of this development. Can you just remind me about the standards or thinking around the distance between buildings?
Councillor Smythe. Councillor Smythe, can you say any more?
Sorry.
There are no adopted standards for separation in your plan. It is a matter of judgment and whether that degree of separation is appropriate. And that is often quite contextual. As you imagine, the degree of separation between placing flats in a city centre location is different from perhaps that we might see in Farlington or Drayton or some of the lower density parts of the city. So we've looked at it, and in the location, as far as it is specifically fixed, the parameters rather than the black and white line, which is part of the layout, reserve matters, we're satisfied that is a reasonable separation between, in that case, the Crown Place and the proposed co-living space.
Good question. Any more questions? Councillor Smythe.
Just one. It's about the National Rail contribution. I recall another development that we looked at in this committee several years ago when we were all rather surprised that National Rail was looking for contributions. After all, it's good for their business to have more people on the doorstep to, in order, to travel. Could you just give us a little bit more about that and whether it's something that will be contested by us or the developer, or how that works nowadays? We were a bit shocked last time we came across this.
Yes, you'll see TBC against a couple of these, either TBC because they haven't been calculated yet, such as the Section 106 monitoring fee, or TBC because there is still contestation to do. The degree of intervention for active travel, we think, needs a bit more work. It's a lot of contribution for a city centre issue, and certainly the degree of contribution to Network Rail, or indeed a contribution to Network Rail, is a matter of negotiation still to be resolved. I think we do need more, and we are in active conversations with Network Rail. We do need more from them to justify why, say, they sell tickets and so on and so forth. Of course, there is a public subsidy built into our rail system, so it's not entirely true to say all new business is good business kind of thing, but we do need to unpick that. I would add, and it's a good opportunity to do so, this scheme will make a estimated minimum £5.2 million SIL contribution, which obviously is then for this city to decide how to contribute to active travel, rail, health, roads, schools, etc. So there is a substantive infrastructure contribution that is for this city to describe to meet the more generic needs of a scheme, and a rail contribution. Certainly some improvements in Portsmouth Southsea Railway Station have been partly funded by SIL, I know, so it might be that we take it out of this 106 conversation, and that's something that they can discuss with the council as a corporate entity as part of your capital programme.
Thank you very much. And I do know from travelling regularly on the train that it's not nearly as crowded and probably a bit too empty actually nowadays, the journey up from Southsea to London. So thank you for that.
Any other questions? Any comments or proposals from the committee? I think Councillor Mason's already kind of indicated
I hadn't. Okay.
In a previous comment.
In previous comments, yes. I think this is something which needs our support. I realise that this is quite different from the outline which was floated some months ago. And this is because it is a difficult site. It is not an obvious site on which you can make a lot of money. And so I think that what we have here is an interesting outline planning application. And I propose the officer's recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Smythe, you'll second it. Thank you. Councillor Atwell, comment?
Just about the informative around cycle parking provision. It would I think it would just give me a little peace of mind that that we've contributed to the conversation around the number of parking spaces for cycles.
Would that become condition number 38, or would that?
No, an informative is just that.
An
And
informative.
if Councillor was happy to delegate to officers, we would draft something along those lines to inform the applicant.
peace of mind.
Them to, properly review the council's SPD in respect to cycle parking, etc., etc.
On that,
if Councillor Mason is amenable,
yes.
Happy, Hugh, if there's an informative.
On that, it probably doesn't need to be elevated to that status, but just picking up on something that Councillor Mason made about the lounge area on Building A, and I know it's a reserve matter thing, so I know it's not going to make any difference to here, but thinking ahead, I think this is the importance of this committee, is that we contribute because we're representing residents. I'm just trying to imagine what that might look like. If it's a lounge, which is like a goldfish bowl, I'm not too sure whether I would be happy putting my feet up and watching TV with loads of people walking past. And if it's not, what is it going to look like? Is it going to be a mirrored outside, or is it going to be this? Don't need to flesh it out now, but I think at reserve matters, if consideration could be given to that as it is on the street level, that would be much appreciated. As I say, it's not a significant thing in the scale of things here, but...
Chairman, if I can just give some reassurance to members, they're increasingly common features of flats, more like hotel lobbies than a lounge in that sit down to watch telly sense. And I would just note that the applicant's agent has been busily making notes throughout all of the discussions, so I'm sure that message has gone away with him.
I've been noticing, that's where my eye contact was. Okay, so any other comments from anyone? I'm very curious to see how this co-living thing happens. I'm reassured that it's really, 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 really successful in other areas of the country. I'm curious about it. When you look at the plans and you realise that your substantial kitchen is a couple of floors up, I don't know whether I'd be taking my onions and potatoes up there, but however, I am lucky enough to have my own house, so I might have done when I was younger. But anyway, I think I am genuinely curious about it, and I think it's a really, really good scheme and combination for much needed accommodation in an area where there is a lot of criticism for it being left derelict. So I'm happy to support that proposal. So the proposal we've got in front of us, which is for conditional outline planning application with those 37 conditions, proposed by Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Smythe. Committee, all those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's unanimous on that item. So thank you very much for everyone's questions and contributions. We're just going to have a little bit of a switch over with Chair now because I'm doing a deputation on the next one. So give us a couple of minutes.
for the benefit of those online, I have just taken the chair. I'm Deputy Chair of Planning, and Susie Horton has moved into a seat in the chamber. This is because Susie is going to be one of those giving a deputation on this particular application. And we're going to consider the application for 10 Norman Road, which is on page... We got it? 80? 89, yes, that's right. This is an application for a change of use from a house in multiple occupation class C4 to a 7-bed, 7-person house in multi-occupation. And I'd like to ask officers to introduce the report to us, please.
Thank you, Chair. 10 Norman Road, an application for a change of use from a house in multiple occupancy to a 7-bed, 7-person house in multiple occupancy. The application has come to Planning Committee because of the number of objections and call-in requests from councillors Girarda and Horton. We're in the central South Sea ward. Norman Road comes off Lawrence Road, just to the west, just out of picture, about 250 metres north of Albert Road, just to place you. It's an existing HMO terraced in a street of terraced Victorian houses. The increase in occupancy is 3 persons because the HMO has been used by 4 people over the years. The proposal is to increase the occupancy by 3. Members are more used to seeing increase in occupancy of 1 or 2 persons, where on individual merits of each case, officers have generally concluded that increase in occupancy doesn't require planning permission because it's not a material change of use. Members have voted on that each time and taken their view on whether or not it does, and if they had decided it does, to go on to assess the merits. This is different in that the increase of 3 persons, as described in some detail in the report, officers consider is a material change that requires planning permission. With respect to the mixed and balanced communities, this is already an HMO, so it has no effect on that in terms of the number of HMOs, but it would be an increased occupancy of the property by 3 persons. There are 33 HMOs locally, including the application site, out of 71, which is a 46.48%. Of course, the threshold is 10%, but in this instance, it's an intensification of occupancy rather than a new HMO, so it does not affect the total. But members will recall the Emerging Local Plan Policy, PLP 20.2, which does introduce a resistance, except in exceptional circumstances, of an increase in occupancy in an area already above the 10%. Members will remember from previous a couple of reports over the last couple of months, and indeed in this report set out, because the Emerging Local Plan doesn't have full weight yet, and because of the balancing factor of the housing land supply, in this instance, officers do recommend the application for approval with respect to mixed and balanced communities. With respect to the layout of the property, that is the existing 4-bedroomed. So at the moment, you come in through the front door and there's the straight into the lounge. Next along is a bedroom, and then into a kitchen and a bathroom in a lean-to rear extension, and then upstairs into 3 more bedrooms. So the property will be extensively remodelled internally and extended. So at the rear would be a permitted development rear extension, which would form part of the communal living dining room, and then the roof will be extended with the large rear roof extensions and the door and the roof lights on the front. So moving through the property, bedroom 6 is the first one next to the front door. That's 10 square metres. Bedroom 7, 10 square metres, and then through into the rear kitchen dining room, 23.1, which is beyond the 22.5 set out in your guidance. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms, just clear of the 10 square metres, and onto the first floor again, just on the nose of 10 square metres. So with 7 residents, there would need to be 2 shower rooms and an additional separate WC with hand basins. So on the ground floor, you can see 1 shared shower room. On the top floor, there's another shared shower room, and the separate WC is next to that. And so on the first floor, there's an additional shower room, a shared shower room. So with respect to your numbers and size of sanitary facilities, it complies as well. And then looking beyond just the size standards, are we happy with the overall form of the rooms and the amenity they would offer, including light and outlook? And the answer is yes, officers would be satisfied with those. Those are the principal issues. The report sets out the various objection comments from local residents and the responses. Otherwise, I think I'll just quickly remind you that in the supplementary matters, the SMAT report, we've just had an amended plan, I think yesterday, just to address the roof lights. They've come in as slightly larger than they were previously. You can see it there on the bottom left, the front elevation, 2 good-sized roof lights lighting that top room. Downstairs, the bedroom, the rear bedroom, which is number 7, has got a full-height glazed window there. That is already a bedroom in the existing HMO, so with a smaller window, so that's actually an improvement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I move on then to the deputations, the first one being Lee Lloyd. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lee Lloyd. My mum and I are the local developers behind this project. We are not a large development company. This is a small, local, family-led project, and it's one that's very personal to us. As a local project, we are also employing local trades and contractors, supporting local jobs and providing income for families within the Portsmouth community. Unlike the 7-bed HMOs already approved earlier, this application relates to an existing HMO, not a new one. The property has operated as shared accommodation for many years, in fact for close to nearly 2 decades, without any complaints or issues. What we are asking for today is 1 additional bedroom to the 6 bedrooms that are already permitted under C4, moving from what is already a lawfully shared house into a 7-bedroom arrangement. So the real question before you is not whether it's an HMO, that has already been established over many years, but whether the additional extra occupants create meaningful harm. I would respectfully suggest that it does not. The property sits within a street where shared housing is already part of the established character. There is an HMO next door and a council house on the other side. This is not a change in the nature of the area. It's a continuation of what already exists. And importantly, despite being in use as a shared accommodation for many years, there have been no complaints, no issues, and no adverse impact on neighbours. In terms of concerns that are often raised, parking. The property is within a controlled parking zone where permits are already restricted. This means that regardless of occupancy, the property is limited in how many parking permits it can obtain, and that position does not change. In addition, our target tenants are working professionals, many of whom work locally and do not rely on cars. We are also providing secure cycle storage to actively support that. I'm an estate agent of 25 years, well aware of the parking issues, and I'll be managing this site, and it will be marketed as no parking. So in practical terms, there is no material increase in parking demand. Noise and management. This is not a poorly managed shared house. All tenants will be on individual professional tenancy agreements with strict controls in place. No additional occupants, no informal sharing, and no long-term guests. We have also invested in enhanced acoustic insulation, specifically to reduce the potential impact between rooms and neighbouring properties. And again, the most important point, in spite of the significant upgrades, This property has operated as an HMO for many years already without complaint. Overdevelopment and standards. There is no material expansion beyond what is already approved. This is not an overdevelopment. This is an upgrade of an existing property. All bedrooms exceed the 10 metres squared, meaning residents are not reliant on communal space in the same way as lower quality HMOs. The communal space exceeds required standards, and there are bathroom facilities on each floor, improving overall living conditions. Even elements that go beyond minimum requirements such as additional shower provision are about raising the standard of accommodation, not pushing density. Bin storage. The property is flat-fronted. There are others on the street. As are others on the street. There is no alternative bin arrangements available, and what is proposed reflects the existing and accepted approach within the area, maintaining a clean and practical layout. Policy position. As an existing HMO, this proposal does not conflict with policy PCS 20. There is no loss of family dwelling here. That has already occurred historically. And the proposal is not considered to conflict with any adopted planning policies. But beyond planning policy, I would like to explain why we are doing this. My mother came to this country as a care worker and a nurse to support the NHS. Like many people entering these roles, she started on a modest income. And in today's market, someone in that position cannot afford even a small flat. That is the reality for many people in Portsmouth today. Nurses, carers, young professionals, people we rely on every day. They are increasingly being pushed into lower quality shared housing, often poorly managed, simply because they cannot afford anything else. This project is about changing that. It's about providing high quality, well-managed, professional accommodation for people who deserve better, but cannot yet afford to live alone. Not overcrowded housing, not unmanaged housing, but safe, well-designed, professionally run homes. This is not about maximizing profit. It's about raising standards in a part of the market that is often overlooked. The planning officer has reviewed this application in full and has recommended its approval. He has concluded that the proposal is acceptable, compliant, and does not result in harm. I would respectfully ask the committee to place weight on that professional assessment and determine this application on its planning merits. And finally, I trust that this application will be considered fairly based on the evidence before you and the planning policy framework. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lloyd. Thank you. Now I'm going to go to ask, there's nobody else wanting to speak on this, is there? No. So to Councillor Susie Horton, Central South Sea Ward Member.
Thank you, Chair. I think I demonstrate consistently my principled support of HMOs, and I applaud the policies that have driven up standards and the quality of HMOs in the city. But I can't support this one. As a councillor in Central South Sea for over a decade, I've dealt with the result of the pre-PCS 20 days, where roads like Norman Road became unbalanced with 40 to 50% HMOs before the policy took effect. What feels like salt in the wound to those residents who are not living in HMOs is the ever-expansion from developers. Presumably, previously, they might have bought up the rest of the street, but they're now stretching the capacity of their existing stock to on those houses. I fully understand the range of concerns from residents about HMOs, and I'm well aware of which ones are related to material planning matters and which ones not. So I won't be focusing on the type of person, the 10% rule, parking, because I know that they're not relevant to this application before us. I've also read the officer's report, which is very extensive, as well as all the objections. Okay. So this is why I can't support this recommendation. The first point is regarding the amenity for future tenants of this house. This application is another example of what in planning parlance is often called extensive remodelling internally, i.e. gutting a house, reducing ceiling and floor heights to squeeze in a number of extra rooms in an originally 2 up, 2 down house. This application adds 3 bedrooms in a cram-in manner that impacts the amenity of the residents living in them and the residents in the rest of the road. While the space standards are just met on most counts, and maybe we've got used to higher quality applications, this has a real cramped feel about it. And maybe the committee could particularly scrutinise. I did have the light in the top front bedroom, but it seems like that the applicant has already rectified that. But the minuscule size of the shower room, which I know is argued as an extra, but if you're a resident living in it and you can't actually dry yourself, it doesn't matter what the planning committee actually meant. The fact that there's no toilet on the first floor where there are 3 bedrooms, and to give some consideration to the refuse arrangements, given that this property is flat fronted with no forecourt, even though the report did say there is a forecourt on page 90. Okay, but the main point I want to make is to do with there's the principle of the development, this intensification of occupancy that we're hearing about. Regarding the 10% rule, I get the phrase, the application is not considered to have any material impact on the number of HMOs, as it already is one, and it does not change the mix of dwellings. I get that, I can't dispute that. The report states there's 46.48% rate of HMOs in a 50-metre radius. That is also true. And just for context, there are 16 HMOs on this one road, Norman Road, which is a short road with a total of 38 houses. So that's another way of looking at it. But the reality is that the lived experience of the negative impact of this cumulative effect of expanding HMOs in areas where the original number's already at 40% is making a difference. It's been a challenge for the committee to navigate the current planning law to find a way to evidence this impact. But the fact is, +1, 2, 3, 4 rooms on all of the HMOs in certain areas does create a demonstrable increase in refuse, in traffic, and by traffic I mean walking, cars, bikes, and the community balance of an area. An addition to occupation, in this case, is a material change of use, as a significant change in activity can change the character of an area. So just for, I know we have to look at what we've got in front of us, but if in this road, the identical expansion of all the other HMOs would result in 48 more rooms, or the equivalent of 16 extra houses of the original size in a road of 38 houses. Thankfully, the emerging local plan, the policy PLP 20, supports that planning permission should not be given for +3 rooms, and that the planning committee can give moderate weight to this policy, which says that increases in occupation of existing HMOs only allowed in exceptional circumstances where the area already has 10% HMOs. Please note that when the local plan is adopted, it would be recommended for refusal. I'm well aware that every case needs to be determined on its own merits, but it reminds me of the application the committee dealt with on Fraser Road last December with similar extensive internal remodelling in order to add 3 to 4 rooms to an established HMO, and the cumulative impact on the community, which this committee refused. So in conclusion, I am pleased that officers consider that this would represent a material change in the use of the property and therefore would require planning permission. I think that the additional occupants, near doubling this occupancy, would make a significant difference in the character and the scale of activities resulting from the proposed use. And I would refuse planning permission, citing the moderate weight given to the emerging local plan PLP 20, the impact on amenity and the nitrates mitigation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horton. Now we come to questions from members of the committee. Councillor.
In the deputation, Councillor Horton mentioned extensive remodelling and floor heights. Has there been any change in the heights of the rooms in the remodelling of this property?
Is it Simon or David or Ian?
Thank you.
Simon, thank you.
If we go to this section there, thank you, David. Yes, you can discern that the ceilings would be taken down in height. Principally by looking at the front eaves point, you can see a line coming in which the applicants have confirmed is a small bit of ceiling remaining, the original ceiling, and then the floor ceiling height would come down behind that to accommodate reasonable head height in the proposed roof space.
What are those head heights?
They are ground floor 2.35 metres, first floor 2.35, top floor 2.525 metres.
More questions? Or Councillor Madgwick.
I'll stay consistent, Chair. Bedroom 1, once again, I don't like my 1.5, but according to your plans, I wasn't going to mention it actually because of the last conversation, but if you look at that top image there, it looks like that 1.5 structure goes up to the bay window and then continues for almost the entirety of that room. Would that be an accurate assumption that it doesn't get to its peak height until the entrance of the room door? That's certainly how it looks.
Thank you. I think the section is, yeah, it's through that room.
Yes, so it doesn't actually peak to its full height until the end of the entrance door. So just to the right there seems to be a little line just south of the entrance door opening. So are we to assume that the full height of the room is only that real top section near the top of the number 1?
If we go back to the section, please, David. Thank you. Yes, it reaches its height towards about two-thirds of the way into the room from the street. Yep.
So we're probably only realistically looking at about 3 square metres of that room then, or maybe 4 square metres that's actually at full ceiling height roughly, as in the full 2.5.
Well, yeah, I mean the requirement is that 1.5 metre ceiling height is 10 square metres, which they provide.
Thank you.
Can you show us where the line is on that shows the transition from 1.5 to more than 1.5, please?
Yeah. On the floor plans, you can see the dotted line going across the 2 Velux windows there. It shows that. So.
And the resulting size of the room north of that line?
Is 10 square metres. So there's 10 square metres plus whatever is south of that line.
Any further questions?
Yes, please.
Councillor Standish.
Just going, can we go back to the previous diagram where you saw the side profile of the... That's it. So we're looking at the room at the very front there. And I think what Councillor Madgwick was saying is, yes, there is that slope up, but the actual full height of the room is very, very small, isn't it? It's literally as the door opens, that's the only bit of the full height of the room. The rest of it is a sloping ceiling. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Councillor Madgwick.
Thank you again. Yeah, following up from that, I think that's really relevant because, as I say, I know that obviously the usable space, and I respect the law, we've gone through that today of the 1.5, but looking at that slope, it does mean, Chair, that, and I'd like planning officers to confirm this, but it looks like if I was in there, for example, 6'4" guy, over 2 metres, could I only stand in just a very small section of it without having to bend down?
Thank you. The case officers has helpfully measured the floor plans. Above 2.3 metres height is 6.75 square metres. So there's a good proportion of the room that would be of that particular height.
Thank you. So yeah, there's only 6 square metres of standable floor space. Thank you.
just if members do wish to look at numbers, obviously the minimum size for a bedroom, just for a bedroom, is 6.51 square metres. Obviously, we are looking for that extra space, extra amenity space that helps provide them some place to sit and have a desk or whatever, etc. So they've got 6.75, which is a bedroom size in its own right. You can put a wall up there, and that would be a lawfully sized bedroom. The additional space, which has the sloping ceiling over it, from that 6.75, let's not quibble over 25 centimetres, is that reduced height space, but it does meet your standards, or we're satisfied it does meet your standards in this case.
Thank you, Ian. Any further questions before we move on to comments? Good. Okay. Any comments from people? Councillor Dorrington.
Thank you,
I've got the
Chair.
wrong name.
Councillor Cordy here.
Councillor.
I'd like to thank Mr Maguire about the comment earlier about just because a room does or doesn't fit the numbers doesn't mean that it's either livable or unlivable. I think, yes, this room that we're talking about here does fit the numbers, but is it actually the right shape? I'm not sure it is.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Madgwick?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I was uncomfortable with the one earlier. I'm even more so uncomfortable with this, which is a real shame because I think the applicant seems like a really nice gentleman that's in it for the right reasons. I actually do. I think he's probably a really good example of an applicant that I would personally like to support, but I am struggling. I always remain consistent. I mean, we've got here the fact, let me just go back to the plans, we've got the fact that there is no livable, there's no toilets on the second floor. If you get the plans up for me, yeah, there's no toilet on the, or was it first floor, whichever one it is, proposed first floor. There's no toilet on there, which means that you're going to be residents going up and down. I'm not a big fan of that. Obviously, that's not a good proposal at all. I think the statement that Councillor Horton made about the additional shower on that proposed first floor, I don't think you could reasonably dry yourself off in that small space. It's very, very tiny. This does seem to me like you're trying to pack a lot of people in. Every single room is almost smack bang on the size provided for guidance. There's no means for leverage, and I will stick back to the fact that the room number 1 to me does not seem proportionate or usable or livable, and I think Councillor Cordy makes a really good point about the fact that Mr Maguire said earlier, just because a room does meet standards doesn't mean it's appropriate for our area. So on that basis, I'd like to propose an objection to this application on the grounds that it does represent an overdevelopment and would provide a poor standard of accommodation. Also off the fact that obviously the shower room on first floor isn't compliant with our size guidance, and I'm also not convinced that bedroom 1 is a good standard of accommodation.
Well, George basically said what I was going to say. To echo that, I mean, we have standards for a reason. I know we don't do planning by numbers, but the shower room is unacceptable. Bedrooms 3 and 4, I think, yes, on paper, appear to be usable, but I do not consider them to be livable. So I think that was a proposal. Happy to second the proposal to refuse.
Any further comments? Can I just take a moment of legal advice, please? I just wanted to take a little bit, get some legal clarification, because I'm taken with the fact that this would not be allowed if our local plan is approved, because we don't want to encourage the nightmare scenario that Councillor Susie Horton pointed out, which is every single building in that Road becoming, the ones that are already HMOs, becoming 7-person dwellings and adding 48 more rooms if everybody did it. And I think this would create a very dangerous precedent. I know it has happened in some properties, but I would like to give some weight to the draft local plan. It does say we can do that in our in the report. And I therefore would, if we were going to refuse the application, I'd like that to be one of the reasons that we gave to support a refusal, which would mean you have to
I'm happy to subsume, Chair.
have a new look at it. Got a seconder for...
Chair, just perhaps I can just clarify, I think for the benefit of everybody, the legal advice that was actually given, which is that obviously the emerging plan should be given some weight, but the professional advice that you've had from your planning officers is that it's outweighed by the other factors involved.
Thank you. No, thank you, I understand that. My question was, can we give any weight to it at all? Thank you. Any further comments people would like to make?
Chair, if we...
If members have nothing, could I come back on a couple of minutes?
Course.
Thank you, just to assist. So we have, I think, 4 separate reasons for a refusal from Councillor Madrick and a 5th in terms of the local plan emerging policy. The first one from Councillor Madrick was overdevelopment. Just wanted to understand what the effect of that, to be clear, is considered to be. On the first floor shower room being too small, just to remind members, the shower room isn't required at all. I wouldn't suggest that was a robust reason for refusal. It's an extra. And then there not being a first floor toilet. I think a lot of people live in houses where there isn't a toilet on every floor. So, and again, there's no such requirement in your planning guidance for a toilet on every floor. So again, I would not recommend that either as a reason for refusal. So I just had that one question, please, about the overdevelopment and the effects of that, please, to understand that.
Councillor Madrick, yes, please.
Sure. Listen, I don't think saying that in most family homes not having a toilet on the first floor is relevant. This isn't a family home. That's the point, sir. Is we're converting it from a family home. Well, it would have been a family home back in the day, you know, not for the last 20 years. But just because it doesn't mean it shouldn't. We need to provide a good standard of living. It's currently at 4 bedrooms. I think as a committee we've discussed, it's currently at 4 bedrooms. They are doing a material change to the construction of the property, including lowering the ceilings. They are absolutely materially changing this building, which is a complete overdevelopment of the building or its intended purpose or use. As I say, this isn't just a minor couple of additional walls they're putting up. This is a full, well, not destruction, but a full renovation, including changing the ceiling heights, changing everything really. So this is why it's an overdevelopment. You've got rooms that have been crammed in. 4 bedrooms seems more than suffice. It seems like a great plan what they've currently got and what they currently use it for. But 7 bedrooms where every single bedroom hits the size provided by the millimetre does not fill me with confidence. They've tried to overcrowd this house entirely, and it's simply not appropriate. It is an overdevelopment.
Simon, can we accept that as one of the reasons for a potential refusal?
I understand the feeling that the rooms are only just big enough and that's all crammed in. So is that an effect on the occupiers or the area or both?
That's all right. Councillor Vallely can answer. Do you want to answer? Both? Yeah, both.
I mean, it is the case that we normally now see rooms with en-suites, and so although our standards would allow this, it is a very small shower and there isn't a loo on the first floor. That is substandard to what we're used to seeing nowadays.
Chair, can I just while Simon's doing that,
Councillor
just pick up on the point about the shower room. I mean, it's part of the application, so we have to consider it. Surely it's just dismiss it because it's an extra. doesn't seem to make any sense to me. If you think through logically, so somebody could come along with an even smaller shower room, and we just wave it through. I don't understand the thinking.
If I can assist, the whole point is extra to the need. You could just lock the door and walk away from it and never use it. As a resident, you've got a choice. You can use the bathroom, that is the official bathroom, if you will, of the scheme on the ground floor, or if you want to use a small shower room, which is very difficult to dry yourself in, etc., that's the choice you can make. You could just take it out. The applicant could go home right now and lock the door and not give the tenants a key, and it's not the shower room anymore. That's why it's additional. That's why refusing it for having something that isn't very good but isn't a requirement. If it was the only shower room, it would be a reason for refusal. We wouldn't be recommending it for you. But as you don't have to use it, the official bathroom is on the ground floor, there is no hope of winning that on appeal. It has no relevance to any sort of robust decision making. Yeah.
So, what you were just in the middle of advising us, Mr. Turner, about the reasons for refusal, that it would be reasonable for George to add to his proposal.
Okay, yes, so if that assists then. So overdevelopment because of the number of rooms, all the rooms just meeting the standard, being crammed in with an effect on the occupiers and the character of the area. Number one. Number two, poor standard of accommodation. That's is that the toilets, perhaps, on it, not on the first floor? Well, it's all wrapped in, I think, with the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly, and bedroom one as well. I do really strongly feel that, I mean, you've admitted yourself that only 6 square metres would be, someone could stand in it fully upright, so I think that's definitely not a good standard of accommodation for that particular room as well as the shower room.
Thank you. I think I've got all the individual matters, whether or not we wrap a couple up into one reason refusal, if that's the ultimate vote. If we pick them up, overdevelopment in general, in terms of amenity for the occupiers and the wider area. The bedroom one, all the bedrooms being just big enough. The first floor without a toilet. The first floor shower not big enough. And the emerging local policy for increase in occupancy in an area already beyond the 10%. And I would add special protection areas if that is.
Sorry, just so part of my contribution was bedrooms 3 and 4 being usable on paper but not livable. There's that sort of setback. There's an area that's sort of set back where the window is. I don't know if you agree, George?
Do we need to see another picture of that? Could we see the floor plans, please? I mean, the problem about if the committee agrees that the bedroom one is too small, that is okay if it's too small, down to 6.5, but we would have to see then a combined living space that was bigger, just to explain the consequence of that. And it isn't particularly bigger, it's only 1 metre squared over the standard. So it's all pretty small, but that's how that would be dealt with, Councillor Madrick.
So I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm sorry, Councillor, I missed it earlier on, but
So I just think, I mean, it's a crammer min, isn't it? So 3 and 4, we've got that where the shower room is. So you've got that little area that's set back there.
Oh, I see.
That might be usable, but it doesn't make the room livable.
I think those sort of alcoves either side of a fireplace, for example, are common in Victorian houses, and you have a chest of drawers, a wardrobe, a desk, whatever you like in there, even your bed if it's the right width, the toe of your bed or something. Yeah, but anyway, I think there are various options. So, yeah, I don't think that's an unreasonable or unlivable configuration and size. That's my view. I'll leave it up to you.
I mean, it certainly wouldn't fit a tail of the bed, would it, for example? Any other comments to add? Can we put in a... yes, yourself.
Yeah, I just feel that this is an overdevelopment. They're trying to cram too much into a space. It's a small terrace house. Like the gentleman said, you know, they could go 1 bedroom bigger, but they've decided to go for 2, and it just seems like too much.
Thank you. Could we put in as a mention of the new of the local plan and the policy that's coming out there? Because I think,
certainly, yep.
You know, having sat in on lots of discussions about that and believed in this policy, that's one of the reasons that I will want to support a refusal on this one. Okay, shall we move to a vote then?
Chair, sorry, I'm unclear if we were keeping the reasoning about beds 3 and 4 after we've had the explanation from the officer.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I was unclear if we were keeping in the reason for refusal about beds 3 and 4, bearing in mind the alcove potentially could be used with a wardrobe, and I've given this advice before. Just throwing more and more reasons at a refusal doesn't necessarily increase the likelihood of winning an appeal. So,
George and Chris, what do you think about that? That was
If the
your suggestion.
officer's guidance to that is usable space, as I say, I do agree chucking in additional things doesn't necessarily strengthen the case. In fact, it can sometimes weaken it because it makes it look a thing. But yes, I'm happy to remove that from the recommendations. Okay. And I think that someone just pointed out then, I think Councillor Corley just said that, you know, if this was an application for 6 bedrooms, it could have had a different light on it because, you know, 6 probably would have been reasonable. And I think that's just worth noting for any future considerations.
I think the applicant already has, does the applicant already have a permission to use it for 6 people or not? Not in this
There's
case.
never been a planning permission, so it's a licensing matter.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It's not, it's unusual in that sense. Shall we move then to a vote? All those in favour accepting the reasons for refusal and refusing this application, would you like to raise your hands? Thank you all. I'm sorry we're not able to give you a planning permission for this development, but thank you for your deputation. I don't think there's any other matters for us to consider, unless there was any further report of a general nature that you wanted to give. No?
No, Chairman, that's everything for today's agenda. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. It's been quite a long application, but we have had one of the largest applications that we've ever seen here, and I'm glad we gave that time and attention as well as the other decisions we made. Thank you very much for your attention and working together, and I declare this meeting closed.